Good evening and welcome. This is a regular meeting of the Princeton Planning Board on April 20th, 2023. Pursuant to Section 13 of the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of the time and place of this meeting has been given by prominently posting the resolution of regularly scheduled meetings of the Planning Board of Princeton for February 2023 through January 2024. A copy was filed with the Clerk of Princeton on January 17th, 2023. Legal notice on the adoption of said resolution was published in the January 13th, 2023 edition of the Princeton Packet. Notice of this meeting also has been posted to the municipal website, princetonnj.gov/calendar. Notice that all regular and special meetings of the Princeton Planning Board will be held electronically via Zoom, was transmitted to the Princeton Packet and the Times, and was filed with the Clerk of Princeton on Tuesday, January 17th, 2023. Please note that this meeting is being recorded. During hearings on applications for development, members of the public will have an opportunity to comment and ask questions. Questions may be asked after an applicant's witnesses have testified. Public comment is heard by the board after an applicant's representatives have finished their presentations and have been questioned by planning board members and staff. Those wishing to comment orally should virtually raise your hand by clicking on the reactions or raise hand icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen, or if participating by phone, by pressing *9. Oral comments will be taken in the order in which hands were raised. We ask with respect that members of the public express your views in 3 minutes or less. We will have a countdown clock to help speakers keep track of time. Please note that speakers who exceed 3 minutes will be interrupted. Inappropriate public comment containing obscenity, hate speech, or relating to matters not before the board will be muted. Harry, will you call the roll, please?
Certainly. Ms. Capizzoli? Mr. Chow?
Here.
Mr. Cohen?
Here.
Mr. McGowan?
Here.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Here.
Mr. Quinn?
Here.
Ms. Sachs? Mr. Texarney?
Here.
Mr. Taylor? Mr. Boddikheimer?
Here.
Mrs. Wilson?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Good. Announcements. Mr. Lesko, you want to kick off announcements with master plan update?
Certainly. I basically have the same thing to say as last week.
Just last week. Yeah.
Yeah. Except we've last week I reported that we were going to have subcommittee meetings, and we've had almost all of them. We have 1.5 left, or one and a continuation left of this round of subcommittee meetings of the master plan steering committee. And then we will turn to the community visioning survey. I don't have a concrete date for that right now, but I've been working with the consultant to put together the questions and work on the technical stuff. And then we will have an open house. I have a meeting tomorrow with a support team of master plan steering committee members, including the chair and the vice chair and Alvin of this board, and to go over some potential changes that we might want to do in the schedule, but nothing set in stone. So expect to see the community visioning survey and the open house coming up soon.
Good. Any other announcements from board members or staff? The only one I have, I probably could do right at the end of the first application, but I want to remind everyone and let folks know who may not already know that I am recused from the second application, the Landwind development application on tonight's agenda, and I think I'm not the only person recused, but I might be the only person here that's recused. I'm a trustee of the New Jersey Conservation Foundation, which has participated in negotiations to preserve this and other properties owned by Landwind. So for that reason, I may not sit. So after this application for All Saints Church is heard, then I will step back and hand the gavel virtually over to the very capable of Vice Chair Tim Quinn and go to the cheap sheet seats. I wish I could say cheap seats without starting to say cheap sheets every time. So that's the only announcement I have. Are there any subcommittee reports? Okay. Then let's go to minutes. We have minutes from a special meeting of October 13th, 2022. Does anybody have comments or edits to those minutes? And if not, would someone like to move them?
I'll move them.
Second.
Thanks. Moved by Mr. O'Donnell, seconded by Mr. Quinn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining?
Abstaining because I wasn't there.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Bodekheimer. Yes, and Carrie keeps track of who was there and who wasn't so that she makes sure that votes aren't counted that are not that people might have made by mistake, not realizing they weren't there. Okay, the first application we have tonight is All Saints Church. This is a minor site plan with conditional use at 16 All Saints Road, block 4401, lot 3.01. This is file number P 2222-292P/CO.
Madam Chair, proof of publication of the service are in order. The notice is proper and the board has jurisdiction.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Mr. Lesko, do you want to get us started here?
Yes, please. Thank you, Madam Chair. Jerry, would you like to swear me in?
Yeah, if you could raise your right hand. In fact, let me swear. Okay, I'll just swear you in at this point. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
So sworn and affirmed.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll introduce the application and then hand it over to the applicant's attorney and then be available to discuss my report as well as the other staff reports. So I'm going to start out by sharing my.
Sorry to interrupt you, Justin. I have to recuse myself. Yeah, I know one of the applicants. So.
Okay.
That's fine. We have 6 members.
Got it. Thank you, Phil. So if you could see my screen right now, I'm sharing a Google Maps aerial photo. The application is at 16 All Saints Road, All Saints Church. And this is an application for minor site plan approval and conditional use approval. The minor site plan committee met on February 15th and they classified this application as minor. However, they under our ordinance do not have the power to recommend for approval due to the conditional uses. So remember, they could only, the minor site plan committee can only recommend approval to the chair if there's no variances, no conditional uses. So that's why you're hearing it tonight. The parcel is just under 16 acres on the corner of Terhune Road and All Saints Road. It's zoned R2 residential. And in this zone and in all zones, in fact, or almost all, I think, places of worship and schools are conditional uses that are allowed by the approval of the planning board. And let me just switch over. I guess I'll just touch upon the minor site plan first, because I'm sure the applicant, they provided a presentation. I'm sure they'll touch upon it in greater detail. This slide, Jerry, is from the applicant's architectural plans, and it's the only one I'll talk about. I don't know if you have to make it an exhibit.
No, I don't think we have to because it's part of the submitted set.
Got it. Thank you. So for the minor site plan part, we're looking at a one-story addition of a hallway and an entrance from the existing building of about 554 square feet. So right here is where the existing building ends. I believe this is under an overhang, and it'd be pushing out the walls 6 feet in most places. Additionally, there's a proposed pergola and some shrubs to be added with other existing landscaping near the pergola. The building cannot be seen from Terhune Road. That's kind of the side where this addition would be because of the thick tree canopy. And this application the improvements are being done with other internal improvements that are not subject to the application. Now moving on to the conditional uses, there are three. One is obviously for the site plan, it's a small expansion of the church. There's also a conditional use for a preschool use for the Princeton Community Family Learning Center, and a third conditional use, a school use for the Princeton Learning Cooperative. We have some more information about students and hours and all that, but I expect the applicant will cover that. It's also in the memo you received, and the applicants their packet, their information they sent in. And then just lastly, I want to mention that this planning board previously approved a conditional use for the French American School to operate out of this building in 2002, and then further conditional use approvals for expansions in 2004 and 2005. The French American School is no longer operating out of this site. However, the aforementioned preschool and school being asked for the conditional uses tonight have been in operation for about 10 years, according to the applicant. Perhaps a misunderstanding under the previous conditional use, but they're formally asking for it tonight. With that being said, I think I'd like to turn it over to the applicant, Madam Chair.
Okay, and representing the, Mr. Letizia, would that be you?
It would. Hello,
Okay.
everyone. It's going to be a long night for me, right?
Maybe.
Double header, double header.
I think there's a
Counselor.
hard stop at 11,
header.
so there's that to look
Right,
forward
I
to.
know, true, that's true.
Two
So,
9-inning games.
That's right. So thank you. It's a pleasure being before you once again. For the record, Tom Letizia, attorney with Troutman Pepper Hamilton Sanders, representing All Saints Church of Princeton, which is the applicant for this application. As noted by Mr. Lesko, this is an application for a minor site plan together with conditional use authorization requests. Before we get started, there were a number of submission waivers requested in connection with the application. Per the memos you received from staff, staff had no objections to the waiver request, but I just wanted to mention now to see if the board has any questions on completeness. The items had to do with historic preservation plan. That is not applicable to this site. Affordable housing, again, not applicable. Sizes, shape, and location of buildings on the track on adjoining properties and across the street. Again, wouldn't be applicable because of the huge distance away from any proposed work here. Tree survey within 200 feet of the construction limit of disturbance. This would include wooded areas that are not being impacted. So we're asking for a waiver from that. And then there's the requirement of delineating the 100-year storm, again, which is not applicable here, and delineation of streams, again, not applicable. So we hope you will agree with staff that these can be items can be waived. Is there any
And Tom, I
questions?
take it, excuse me, I'm sorry. On
Yes.
page 2 of the report by Dan Weissman and Derek, they list the checklist item waivers. Does that accurately set forth what you're looking for in that regard?
I believe it does, Jerry. Just give me one moment.
Sure, sure.
Yes, those are all the items.
Okay, great.
I'm
So,
not, I
Yes, go ahead, Louise.
think that the board is comfortable with those. I think it's okay to say that, isn't it, Jerry? I don't want to overstep.
Yeah, no, I think so, if that's your sense of the board. And I guess if any member
I'm
of the
seeing
board,
heads nod. and-
yeah, and if there's
Yeah.
any member of the board that is uncomfortable with that, they could indicate that. Otherwise, that'll be part, assuming the application is granted, it'd be part of the relief.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
I think we're good. Go ahead, Mr. Letizia.
So, as I'm sure many of you know, All Saints Church has been at this location since 1960. The subject property is located at 16 All Saints Road and is identified as block 4401, lot 3.01 on the tax map. Two small private schools also operate at the site as tenants. The Princeton Community Family Center, also known as the Cub School, which is a preschool and which has been at the site for the past 13 years. And the Princeton Community Cooperative, which is a homeschool alternative for teenagers, which has been at the site since 2012. And Mr. Lesko did make reference to the prior French school at Princeton, which operated at the site pursuant to a conditional use approval from the board in 2002, and then it was amended in 2004, and then in 2005. And obviously the French school left, and then these schools occupied the premises with probably an erroneous understanding that they could operate under the prior conditional use, and that's been their understanding for this long period of time. The church proposes to construct a small 554 square foot addition in the courtyard to update the kitchen and restroom facilities and provide improved circulation inside the building. There will be no increase in proposed in the occupancy, and there will be no expansion of parking. This work was classified as Mr. Lesko noted as a minor site by the site plan committee, but due to the conditional use authorization, which only this board can grant, it must come before you. And as noted by Mr. Lesko, there are basically 3 conditional use authorizations that are being requested. One's related to the church. The church is permitted as a conditional use in the R2 zone. And in terms of the standards for churches, the ordinance specifically exempts churches from the conditional use standards. So there's really no criteria for us to address. The next one relates to the Princeton Community Family Center. That would fall under conditional use section 10B 320-320E, which permits child daycare facilities and nursery schools, including preschools. And there, the board does have some conditions to look at. One is whether there's a local need for the facility. Number 2, whether there's an existence of nuisance factors related to the school. And then the third is the amount of traffic which the proposed use will generate on streets. And we'll provide some testimony related to these to this criteria. And we hope you will agree that this important daycare and preschool is at an ideal location for the community. And then finally, the next conditional uses for the Princeton Learning Cooperative, and that would fall under section T10B-320D, which permits in the R2 zone public and private schools not for pecuniary profit for instructions for grades between pre-K and 12, and provided that the school site conforms to certain standards that are set forth in section 300 of the Guide for Schoolhouse Planning and Construction. The majority of these standards really do not apply because we're not proposing a new school building. We're operating within an existing building. So the majority of these are inapplicable, but we'll have some comment, at least on the criteria related to the environment of the site and safety conditions. And then with that, I think we're ready to make our presentation. So unless you have questions of me, I'm going to call our first witness.
Why don't we swear in all of your witnesses at once?
Sure, that's a great idea.
Can identify them, they can raise their hands, Mr. Mueller
Yeah.
will swear them in, and then you can do sort of a roll call so that they can spell their names for the record.
Right. If you could
Okay,
raise your right
so,
hand, everybody who's going to
first-
testify or may testify, do you
Okay.
swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes,
Okay, so sworn. Please state your full name for the record and spell your last name.
Joseph Mester, MESTER, Trenton Engineering Company.
Thank you.
Michael, I think you're on mute. Michael Farewell.
I'm Lori
Farewell.
Musa.
Oh,
Oh,
go ahead,
sorry.
Lori. Go ahead.
Lori Musa, MUSA, Princeton Community Family Learning Center.
Michael Farewell, Farewell, Farewell Architects, Princeton, New Jersey.
Jane, do you want to announce yourself? You may not testify, but let's at least get you sworn in.
I'm the Reverend Jane Milliken Hague, Hague. I'm the interim rector of All Saints.
Did I swear you in? Were you part of the group?
No, I'm not supposed to be testifying, but you can go ahead and swear me in if you'd like.
Do you swear or just if you could raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes, sir.
So sworn or affirmed. Again, if you could state your full name, spell your last name.
It's the Reverend Jane Milliken Hague, Hague.
Thank you.
And I'm Joel Hammond, Hammon, Princeton Learning Cooperative.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to start with Michael Farewell. So Michael, can you give your business address, please?
Yes, Farewell Architects, 759 State Road, Princeton, New Jersey.
Madam Chair, Mr. Farewell has testified numerous times for this board as a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey. I can have him go through his qualifications again.
Yeah,
if you'd like.
Yes, please, just quickly for the record and yeah.
Sure. Go ahead, Michael.
Let's see. Educationally, I have a degree, undergraduate degree from Yale, and a graduate degree from Princeton Architecture. I've been in practice here in Princeton since 1979 and have been a principal in a series of firms since 1986. I've done a lot of projects in Princeton, schools, churches, housing, and throughout the region, really, Northeast primarily.
That's good. Thank you, Mr. Farewell. We accept your qualifications. Appreciate
you.
that.
Thank you. So, Michael, I think you have a number of slides that you're going to be presenting. This first one, can you identify, please?
Yes, thank you, Tom. And I'd just like to say greetings, Madam Chairman, from Hollow Road and the Sour Lens, your former stomping grounds.
Yes. Amazingly beautiful at this time of year as well.
Yes, enchanting. Yes, this first slide is really a cover slide of the courtyard on the south side of the 1960s All Saints Church, which consists of a school and a sanctuary.
And let's mark this. Let's mark this electronically as an exhibit. Will it be a series of slides, which will be one exhibit, Tom, or should we mark them separately?
It's up to you, Jerry. We can do it all one and then just do like A1, and then just do
A1, A1B, yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. Let's do them separately, just so there's no confusion. So this will be A1.
Okay.
This will be the rendering. Okay. And it's going to come up again, by the way, at the end. so you know. Okay.
Okay, I'll speak to this in a little bit more detail later on, but the next slide, which is the engineering, first sheet of the engineering set prepared by Trenton Engineering. Joe Mester of Trenton Engineering is here, but this is a fairly modest impact in terms of engineering because we're only building about 550 square feet. But in terms of location, you'll see that Stewart Road is down on the lower or south side of the site. I'm sorry, Stewart Road is off to the southwest of the site. Van Dyke Road is immediately to the the east side, and then All Saints Road on the northeast side. The sanctuary is actually close to the middle of the site. It's a heavily wooded site with the exception of its parking areas and a cemetery in the northwest corner of the site. The building has been mentioned, was originally built in the 1960s by a well-known New York firm. It's a pretty good example of sort of what we now call mid-century modern architecture with a combination of stone and glass, and it's fairly artfully done. In this particular plan, the blue, which you can make out, Matt, I don't know if you can zoom in there. Thank you. The blue represents the L-shaped addition to this building. It's on this courtyard on the southeast side, and it's intended to ease circulation into what is the fellowship hall of the church. The next slide, please. I guess this will be A2. Counting.
This will be A3.
A3. Okay.
And what is this plan?
This is a plan showing in a little bit more detail tree protection, areas of paving, and some drainage and utilities. Again, part of the landscape and engineering part of the set. Landscaping here is going to be pretty minimal. We're protecting existing trees and supplementing the planting in the courtyard with some new shrub-like trees. And the next slide, A4. Here's a little bit more detail on that planting scheme, mostly on the northeastern side of the courtyard, banked against the building. Next slide. So if there are any detailed questions about engineering, we have the additional drawing set we can look at, but just to highlight some environmental impacts, because the addition and the additional impervious coverage is so small, really a few hundred square feet, there's no real stormwater processing. The downspouts are led to grade and allowed to go into dry wells near that south courtyard. This slide or images an earlier addition, chancel addition to this church. And I show it really just to give a sense of the wonderful character of this church and to make the point that like this addition from 2014, this new addition will keep this character of a kind of glazed addition in contrast to the stone walls of the building. So I think
Jerry, this will be A5, I think, and now this is another photo which will be A6.
okay. A6, this is at the entry to the offices of the church, and again looking up at what was really a kind of nice looking and poetic elevation on that building. Next slide. And the school wing, which is on the western side of that courtyard. You can just see the courtyard a little bit in the right there. So again, these stone walls, a lot of glazing, the roofs float above this space. You know, the glass is usually white in contrast to the darker stone. Okay, the next slide.
And that last one would be A7.
Correct.
A7 or T100. This is a plan which shows the overall complex on the right side and a blow up of the courtyard elevation. Now, we mentioned that this is an L-shaped addition. It's a loggia-like or arcade-like addition to the building that will permit and ease the circulation from the main lobby to this to this existing social space on the southwest side of the complex. So currently the route to this room is either through the kitchen or through a kind of labyrinth of a corridor. So this will make a more graceful entry sequence after service or for special events. And as I say, it's largely a glazed addition, so it's quite open, and courtyard will really be featured. In addition, there'll be access to the courtyard from the two lobbies, so that there's more graceful flow out into that space. What are we up to? Six?
That was eight.
A9. Yeah, that was, the last one was
This is
A8. so this would
A9,
be
yeah, okay,
A9.
A9.
A9. This shows both a blow up of the plan with a reconfigured kitchen, new barrier-free bathroom, some additional pantry and storage space for the kitchen, some additional storage adjacent to that, and then essentially an upgrade in the finishes of the large social meeting space that's there with good access to the kitchen. So this project is really mostly interior, and it's getting a code compliant and upgraded kitchen that will be highly functional for the various users with good storage, good refrigeration, energy efficient appliances, new mechanical system to take care of this additional square footage. And this, by the way, will be an all electric heat pump system, building on a recently installed heat pump system, so that the energy efficiency of this construction will be very high. Next slide. Really just to return to this rendering, and so you're looking into that courtyard, you're seeing the social space on the left-hand side, the courtyard, and the entry into the existing lobby with a kind of trellis structure to the right of the entry to the courtyard. So I think that sort of covers the broad outlines of the project, and if there are specific questions about engineering or architecture, we can address those.
I have no further questions of Mr. Farwell. He's available for questions now from the board.
Let me just see more people at once. Do board members have any pressing questions for Mr. Farwell? If not, we can go on and hear from any other witnesses that you want to have testify, Mr. Letizia.
Sure. Okay. Thanks. Thank you, Michael. I now call.
I'm sorry,
Lori-
Mr.
Oh,
Cohen.
go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Letizia.
Sure.
Mr. Cohen, I saw you unmute yourself, so I should have assumed that you had a question. So go
I
ahead.
was being hesitant in terms of the qualification of whether it's an urgent question, but I just wanted to be clear. So the courtyard, the patio, the paved area, as it's shown in this rendering, is that any kind of an expansion of the impervious coverage, or is that already there and you're just building out into the courtyard?
David, that is already there, and we're not really increasing that at all in terms of paved area. It's only the new addition that increases impervious coverage.
Okay, thanks.
Welcome.
Okay, well, actually, that sort of confuses me a little bit, because does the addition not sort of just come over what was already paved, or was it not hardscape there?
It's I think about half of it is hardscape.
Okay,
It was kind of planting bed. So this is building on some of the existing impervious coverage.
okay,
Also, the roof of the existing building projects out about half the width of this new border. So that's
okay.
technically impervious as well.
All right, thank you for that. Any other questions for Mr. Farwell? Okay, Mr. Letizia, who's next? Thanks, Mr. Farwell.
Welcome.
I call Lori Musa.
Hello there, good evening. Princeton Community Family Learning Center is a New Jersey state licensed daycare and
Sorry.
it's okay.
Go through some preliminaries here. So can
Sure.
you again state your full name and business address for the record, please?
Absolutely. It's Lori Musa. I'm the director of Princeton Community Family Learning Center.
And what is your business address, please?
16 All Saints Road, Princeton, New Jersey.
Okay. Please proceed. Please tell us a little bit.
Thank you,
Helps.
thank you. So Princeton Community Family Learning Center is indeed a New Jersey state licensed daycare and preschool for children ages 18 months to 6 years. Our license permits us to enroll 49 children in total across 3 designated classrooms and 1 activity room, all approved by the New Jersey Department of Children and Their Families Office of Licensing. We've consistently maintained our license with the state in good standing for all of our years of operation. Our staff members include myself as the full-time director, 3 full-time lead teachers, 2 full-time classroom aides, and a substitute pool as needed. We accept New Jersey government child care subsidies for low-income Princeton residents, including New Jersey Cares for Kids. We do not charge a rate differential, which means that we accept the subsidy as payment in full for child care services provided to qualifying families. Only 1 other Princeton preschool offers such benefits, and they are Princeton Nursery School on Lee Avenue. Beginning with the start of the 2023-2024 school year in September, Princeton Community Family Learning Center has entered into a partnership with the Princeton Public School System to host 2 district preschool classrooms consisting of 15 children each for a total of 30 children. This partnership is an attempt by the district to provide tax dollar paid pre-K and 3K services to the community as part of a larger statewide initiative to improve both the quality and accessibility of early childhood education and related daycare services. The goal with the PPS-PCFLC partnership is to help reduce the number of children who are subjected to a lottery and for whom preschool services might not otherwise be available. Our program starts at 8:30 a.m. daily, Monday through Friday. And while the school day does end at 3:30 p.m., we offer optional after-school care until 5:30. Historically, about 1/3 of our student enrollment remains beyond the close of the school day, and their pickups are staggered, the last being about 5:30 p.m. We are an academic program and align ourselves with the curriculum of Princeton Public Schools kindergarten entry expectations. And moving forward, we are fully adopting the district's creative curriculum and implementing it across not only the classrooms that we will host for the district, but for all children in attendance at Princeton Community Family Learning Center. Currently, children arrive individually and are greeted at the door by a staff member before entering the building. However, beginning in September, 30 of our 49 students will arrive on 1 or at the most 2 school buses provided by Princeton Public Schools Department of Transportation. Again, children will be greeted curbside and safely removed from their bus and escorted to the school's dedicated entrance by PCFLC staff.
Well, Lori, I think we have a diagram of the space. Why don't we
Yes.
pull that up, Matt? Okay, so can you identify this exhibit, Lori, please?
Sure, absolutely. So let's see here. There's an indication to room 182 on the left side of the diagram. Yep, and there's a little walkway that leads up to it.
All right,
And
I
so-
just want to identify the exhibit for the record. So this is a floor plan diagram of the school space. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. The bold area is our, what we
bold
refer
area,
to as
right, okay.
DIFAS approved space, yes.
Okay, and Jerry, what number are we up to now?
810.
810, yeah.
10. Oh, thank you, Karen. So this is 810. All right, go ahead, Lori. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Alrighty, so right there where it says room 162, there's a dedicated doorway there, and you can see the walkway that leads up to the doorway. And of course, that's the curb right there. So the school buses will pull right up curbside. And I believe it's about 25, 30 feet to the curb. And currently, parents pull up to the curb and we greet the children at the door. The fire zone doesn't start until a little ways down the road, so we're still able to utilize that curb space for drop off.
And what about the internal space? Do you have any comment about that?
About the internal space there that you see on the diagram? Well, yep, one comment is that it looks like a lot of rooms, but it's only 3 large classrooms and 1 activity room, and the designations of A and B for each room just indicate that there's a partition in the room, but we don't use the partition.
Okay, and since you have been on site, Lori, have you received any complaints from neighbors of the church related to your school activities?
Never, no. As a matter of fact, we have enjoyed the enrollment of many of the local children who have an opportunity to walk right to school with their parents in the morning.
Okay, very good. I have no further questions of Ms. Musa. She's available for questions from the board.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes, hi. Thank you very much for your testimony tonight. The the partnership with Princeton Public Schools, is that going to entail an increase in the number of students?
No, not at all. So our occupancy limit is 49. And so the source of our children is going to change, but that number will remain the same.
Okay, thank you very much.
Prior, we were all publicly enrolled, and now the district will provide 30 of those 49 children instead of the 49 children being enrolled privately.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Cohen?
Yeah, just I know that with preschool programs that are located in mixed-use buildings, that there are some access control requirements so that, you know, just the general public can't enter the school at will. Is the addition actually going to have an impact on that in any way? Is it going to help with separating the flow of people through the building?
Yes, actually, the addition will have a very favorable impact. It further distinguishes our operations from those of the rest of the campus.
That's what I thought.
Great,
That's
good to
good.
know. Thanks, David. That was a really good thing to clarify. Mr. Muller or Mr.
Yeah.
Lesko, did you start to say something, or you did, Jerry?
Yeah, is it fair to say that when the partnership starts, and that's going to be when, in the fall? Let me see if I understood that correctly.
Yes, it's September with the school year, the
Now,
start of
would
the
it
new
be-
school year.
And would it be fair to say that there'll be much less traffic because 30 of the students are going to be arriving on 2 buses as opposed to
It would
individual?
be very fair to say that there will be far less traffic, yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Mr. Lesko?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I had a somewhat similar question. Ms. Musa, you mentioned about 2/3 of the students leave at 4. That's what, roughly 32. Are any of those on the bus? Is it 15, 30, 0?
So the school day is going to be 9 o'clock to 3:30. And so the children that are departing on the school bus will depart at 3:30. And those that remain for after school care will be picked up individually.
Okay, so okay, that makes sense. And those will be staggered, the ones after.
Yes, correct.
Understood. Thank you.
All really good things to get clarified. Any other questions for Ms. Musa? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Musa, we'll move along. Mr. Letizia?
Thank you. So my my last witness, not my first, is, is Joel Hammond.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello, Joel. Please give your full name and business address for the record, please.
Yep, Joel Hammond, 16 All Saints Road, Princeton, New Jersey.
And what is your affiliation with Princeton Learning Cooperative?
I'm one of the co-founders and current staff members.
So can you give us a brief overview of your school, and so that the board can evaluate whether you meet the conditional use criteria, please?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So Princeton Learning Cooperative is a unique program that blends the best of homeschooling and school. So PLC students are legally considered homeschoolers, which allows for a lot of flexibility to design an education that works for each individual child. And then PLC offers an in-person community that offers classes and tutoring and field trips and other academic and non-academic support. We currently have 33 students aged 12 to 18, which is just about full for us. But there's no attendance requirement. So on any given day, we would typically have between 20 or 27 students actually on site. We have four full-time staff members and between 3 and 5 volunteers that come in to lead classes or tutor each day. We also have a number of volunteers from the community that lead classes online. We're open 8:45 a.m. to 3:15 p.m. on Monday, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. That's from like September until early June. Parents provide their own transportation, but not everyone arrives at the same time. So it's a little bit more of a trickle for the first hour or two that we're open, as opposed to everyone showing up all at once. And we also have many, students from Princeton who are within, walking and biking distance from town. We've been at this location since February of 2012. With no complaints from any of the neighbors. In fact, like Lori, we had one of our students joined who actually lived on All Saints, and we had another All Saints resident who volunteered to teach a cooking class a number of years ago. Did we want to talk about the space?
Yes, Joel, please. The lower level.
Yep. So we use the lower level on the other side of the building from Lori's program.
And this, I'm sorry, Joel, interrupt. We'll mark this. Carrie, what number are we up to? 12?
No, 11.
11.
A11, and again, what is this diagram of, Joel?
This is of the entire lower level of All Saints, and I'll sort of point out the parts of it that we use for our program.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you start in sort of the middle here, this big open spot, it's what we call the common room. So, we have a bunch of couches, and when kids are not in classes or doing other things, they're hanging out there. There's a ping pong table. There's just, it's a very pleasant space. And then as you go clockwise around the space to where like 1 o'clock would be, that's one of the classrooms where we do a lot of science classes and other related things. And then as we go around, that's the art room that we use there. The next one down is what we call the music room. To the behind there, there's a large storage space that the church added when they pushed out the sanctuary. So there's a large storage space back there that the church uses. As we can continue around, that's the choir room. We don't use that for our space. And then there's a storage closet and a stairwell to the upper level. And then the next rooms down this hallway are just used for various classes. So most things at PLC are fairly small. There's 3 or 5 kids in a class, or a lot of one-on-one things. And so this arrangement is really quite ideal because we can all fit in that big space, and then we have lots of little spaces where various classes can happen. So those 3 down that hallway, the last one is the library there. And then this bigger one here. So when we do have larger things, maybe we have like 10 or 12 kids, would be like a really large class that would meet there. The boiler room, is obviously, we don't use that, sort of set behind on the far side of that space. And then the workshop and our recording studio for the music group is there. Then there are bathrooms, and finally there's the other stairwell that provides entrance.
And how do the students access your space?
Yeah, so the same driveway that Lori's program is on, so where you saw her drop off, just a couple doors down, there's a curbside drop off where kids are let off in the morning, and it's probably 10 or 15, maybe 15 or 20 feet to that front door, and then kids use the stairwell there.
Do any students drive themselves?
Yeah, we have a small number of older kids who are just getting their license, and so we have I don't know what the exact number is, but maybe 3 that have their license and drive.
And can you comment on the location of your school at this site, and how it sort of fits into a positive educational environment?
Yeah, the space is ideal for us, really. It's very safe. It's set back, obviously, from everything, in a lovely neighborhood. It's sort of, like I mentioned, it's easily accessible. So when kids are getting dropped off, it's very close from the drop off. We have, if you're familiar with the area, so the church owns a little bit of the woods across the parking lot, and then it becomes a Herrontown Woods, which is protected open space. And so there's a lot of hiking trails and public access to that. And so for a lot of our class, the nature class or biology classes, we'll use the woods and the stream and the beautiful sort of natural resources in the area. We're also really close to the shopping center, and so kids will walk down to get lunch or get snacks. There's, for us, we don't use a lot of parking, but obviously the church parking lot is way more than we could use. So that's been great. You're also within walking distance of Smoyer Park, and so we use that a lot for various community picnics and events that we have throughout the year. And there's just a lot of sort of outdoor space on the site, so that, like, the church put in a meditation garden, so there's benches and a kind of a beautiful kind of wooded area that kids can read outside, or do other things to get fresh air and enjoy beautiful days like today.
Thank you, Joel. I have no further questions of Mr. Hammond. He's available for questions from the board.
Thank you. Mr. Cohen?
So I'm glad to learn more about the Learning Cooperative, because I've seen your lawn signs and have been curious about it. But nonetheless, I'm curious, why we're hearing about this. There are no changes to this space as part of this project, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, is this just sort of to make sure that this is an approved use because they haven't previously gotten approved for it, since they've only been there since 2012?
Yeah, that's correct, Mr. Cohen. When we first filed this application, we didn't seek conditional use approval for either of the schools. And we were advised by your staff, particularly Mr. Bridger and Mr. Muller, that we were required to seek approval of all the tenant schools on the site.
Very good.
I was delighted to hear that you make such good use of the nearby woods and outdoor areas. I'd been wondering before, since this is lower level, does this mean this is sort of basement space, or is there natural light that comes into the classrooms and to the school area?
Yeah, so the on the map there, on the, I guess, the bottom part, those 3 classrooms in the choir room along there have windows, to the outside. And one of the other unique things of the program is that, like, for instance, kids are free. It's not like when I was a teacher, it's like you had to have special permission to go outside and, like take your class out or whatever. So, kids are free at any point. Like today was really beautiful. So some kids decided they wanted to play wiffle ball. So they just went out and, playing out in the yard, or they can go upstairs to eat lunch outside or read. So, so there's plenty of, access to nature and light and fresh air and all that.
And a lot of coming and going, you're saying, because of
Yeah.
the type of
Yeah, mostly on the property.
program it is.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
mostly on the property. Sometimes kids will walk down to McCaffrey's or Dunkin' Donuts down there to get lunch or a snack. Yeah.
And do you have bike parking facilities there for your students?
There's a bike rack over by Lori's program, actually, on the other side of the building. So
And do you know how many bikes that accommodates? Do you have, I guess I'm asking if you have enough, but I don't know how much is enough. So
yeah, it's
I see.
we've never had a situation where a kid came in and was like, oh my God, I can't find a place to park my bike. So I think we've had enough thus far in our history.
Reverend Haig, did you want to say something? I saw you raise your hand a couple times. Okay, all right. Any other questions for Mr. Hammond? Nope, not seeing any. Okay, then I will open the public comment portion of the meeting. We have 13 people attending.
Can you please take down the PowerPoint?
Yeah, thanks, Carrie. 13 folks attending. Don't know whether they're here for this application or the next. But anyone who would like to speak about this application, now is your opportunity. So virtually raise your hand and we will move you over to the participant arena. I'm not seeing any hands go up. Oh, there's one. Well, that's Mr. Afrin, who is an attorney associated with the next application. But since he raised his hand, now, Mr. Afrin, we're going to move you over, but this is a time to comment on this particular application, which I assume you know. So, Ms. Phillip, will you move Mr. Afrin over? And anyone else who wishes to comment on this All Saints application, please raise your hand and we'll move folks over in the order in which hands were raised. Not seeing, oh, there's Mr. Afrin. Hi, you can unmute yourself. You have comments on this application, sir?
No, I apologize, Louise. I just wasn't sure if I was seen, so I wanted to let you know while there was a chance to speak that I was here to be put on later. So I apologize.
Okay, got it. We see you.
Thank you.
We see you. And you will be next after the board deliberates and votes on this application. Thank you. Ms. Phillip, you can move Mr. Afrin back to attendees. Are there any comments, any discussion board members want to, well, I'm not seeing any other hands raised for public comment. Last call. Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public comment portion of this hearing and invite board deliberation.
Louise, do you want to have Dan and Derek go through their memo?
Oh, yes. Yes, I would certainly invite them to do that. Yes, Dan Dobromilski, Dan Weissman, Derek Bridger, Mr. Victor Onosike are all here on behalf of Princeton. If you could turn on your cameras and be sworn in case you have testimony to offer.
Mr. Anasike is not here for All Saints. He's here for the next application.
Oh, okay. Okay. Never mind, Mr. Anostika. Thank you. Go ahead, Jerry.
I think the only reports we have, at least that I've got.
Well, don't you need to swear them in or?
Yeah, it would be Dan Weissman and Derek, and I've already sworn in Justin.
Yeah, Dan
Okay.
Dobromilski is
Okay.
also for the next application.
Oh,
Right.
sorry about that.
So Derek and
Sorry, Dan.
Dan Weissman is here somewhere.
Great. Yes, he is.
If you both raise your right hands, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes, sir.
So state your, confirmed. Could you please state your full name for the record? Full names for the record.
Daniel Weissman.
Derek Bridger.
Just to run through the report quickly, we only had 3 comments that are recommended conditions of approval. The first was that the construction entrance supplied with the drawings didn't provide any tree protection for trees within the construction entrance. We requested that that be added to the plans. And then the only other 2 comments were kind of the standard 2 that we always have, one for requesting a construction cost estimate for site improvements for the use of performance guarantee, and then other agency approvals, including Mercer County Planning Board, DRCC, Mercer County Soil Conservation District, and the Sewer Department, if required for any of those.
All right, thank you.
Mr.
And then I-
Letizia, those are all understood and
Yes, Ms. Wilson, we're in agreement.
okay, good.
And then Madam
Bridge-
Chair, if I could, I had just one clarification question. I wasn't sure if the applicant's engineer was going to testify, so I apologize for not jumping in earlier. But I believe I heard Mr. Farewell say that there was roof leaders going to dry wells. I just wanted to clarify. I didn't see any dry wells on the plans. It might have just been a miscommunication, but it looks like the roof leaders are going to riprap aprons. Is that correct?
Yes, and I don't know if Joe Mester is still on the
So
call.
Joe is there.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm still here. Yes,
Joe, do you want to address that?
There, on our plan, what showed the circular connections to the.
Tom, I think we
to
need to
the main-
qualify Mr. Mester.
You're right.
Yes.
Thank you, Jerry. Mr. Meister, can you briefly provide your education professional background?
I'm a graduate of NJIT in 1975 with a degree in civil engineering. I've been in practice since 1980 till present, continuously, several communities and counties in the state. My license is current. I also have a license in a planner's license and a surveying license, but I normally don't use those unless I have to.
Thank you, Mr. Mester. We accept your qualifications.
Okay. On our plan, I don't know if you have shown on any of your plans. In our set, sheet number 5 was a roof leader and footing drain plan. And it showed the main drain that comes down straight, almost down the middle of that patio area to the south and discharges into the pervious area below open. The little circles that are shown on the drawing are connections. They are simply manholes for access to the drain pipes. No, they're not cleanouts. They're manholes. They're cleanouts? Okay, we say we have them down as cleanouts. I guess we don't really need manholes for access. So they're simply cleanouts, and there are connections from several locations along the roof line, and the connections are internal and are shown on the architectural plan. So any more detail would have to come from the architecturals.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that there were not dry wells.
No, there are no dry wells.
Dan, do we
Thank
want any condition with respect to any more data, information on the plans? Or is that okay, the way you're comfortable with what it is?
The plans seemed pretty clear. It was just I wanted that clarification with the dry
Okay.
well. Yeah,
Fine, thank you.
Mr. Bridger?
Sorry.
Mhm.
I don't really have any comments. It's just the conditional use stuff is really kind of cleanup. I think there might have been a misunderstanding from the previous school that was there. Staff has had no complaints or any communication about any programs at the church in the years that I've been with the municipality. So I don't have anything further to add.
That's a lot of years.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Bridger. I think I recall, Mr. Farewell, one of the slides showing some landscaping. Are you adding landscaping? And if so, can you just talk about that a little bit?
Yes, Matt, do you want to go to the landscape plan? It's that fourth one in the civil set.
I mostly want to confirm that everything you're going to plant is native species.
No, Matt, the civil plan for the planting. Yeah. Few more.
There we go.
Well, I'm not sure these are exactly native to central New Jersey.
Can you zoom in a little bit more? I actually did not see this this one when I was looking at the background.
Okay.
Existing. Do you have a sheet that shows the species?
Yeah. So I don't know if Joe, you want to address the detail of this?
And I don't want to
At the bottom of
spend
that.
a bunch of time on this. I'm
Okay.
willing to, you know, put a condition in there that the plantings will be native species to the satisfaction, and the plan will be done to the satisfaction of our landscape architect, Mr. Dobromilski.
Okay, we can certainly follow up with Mr. Dobromilski
Yes.
on that and coordinate the final selection. And these things sometimes change. We usually come back and as they are finally going in, you know, in the following year. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and you may
condition, we can do
need
that.
some special deer protection, at least in the beginning. I'm assuming you have deer pressure.
Well, you know, there's so much for
also,
them to eat here that
they don't come onto the patio.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I would just like to add that this landscaped area is existing landscaped area, okay? The actual area that's
Oh.
shown. Trees are going to be added, you know, as necessary, and we will make sure that, you know, they are of the species that are required,
Okay.
okay?
Yeah, we have we're native species, and, you know, depending on the size and the root zone and everything, Mr. Dobromilski will be able to determine whether they're appropriate for the site.
Yes, we will work with your experts. No
Terrific.
problem.
Thank you.
And it'll be subject,
Uh,
the plan will be subject to Mr. Dobromilski's approval.
Yes. Yeah, well, that will be a condition. Other questions? I think we don't have any more municipal representatives and experts to testify. Thanks for calling for that, Jerry. Any other board questions or thoughts to share? And if not, would someone like to, Mr. O'Donnell?
Just if we're going to deliberation, I think this is absolutely fine, and I have absolutely no issue. The thing that I found most interesting about this entire hearing was that members of the clergy need to be sworn in, but lawyers don't.
You have a problem with that, Owen?
Made me squirm in my chair a little bit, I gotta say. No offense, no offense.
I would like to, I would like to move the application
So move approval of
with
minor
the
site plan
conditions.
with conditional uses as
absolutely.
described.
Yeah, and classification as a minor site plan, approval of the minor site plan, the 3 conditional uses that we talked about, the waivers from the submission requirements and the conditions.
And there were 4 conditions, right?
Right.
The 3 from the staff and Louise's condition about.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, that's been moved. Is there a second?
Sure.
Seconded by Mr. Cohen. Ms. Phillip, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Mr. McGowan,
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell,
Yes.
Mr. Quinn,
Yes.
Mr. Texarney,
Yes.
Mrs. Wilson.
Yes,
Motion carried.
thank you,
Thank you.
Carrie.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. All of you on the All Saints team. Nice job and good luck.
Didn't
With that,
did Mr.
excuse me, Mr.
Bottenheimer
Muller?
vote? I'm sorry, did Mr. Bottenheimer vote?
He was
Bottenheimer.
not asked to vote.
You know, how come?
Yes,
I mean,
Carrie. Mr.
I'm
Bodenheimer-
sorry. I'm sorry, Nat. I'm sorry, Mr. Bodenheimer.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Thank you for that, Jerry, too. You're helping me out a lot tonight. Thank you. All right, and
welcome.
with that, I'm going to step into the attendees area and hand the virtual gavel to Mr. Quinn. And Carrie, would you go ahead and move me over? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Lesko, you have your
Yes,
Your
yes,
hand is raised.
yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not quite recusing myself, but as you probably know, this case has been going on for a while. So Mr. Dobromilski has been working on this, I think, through 2 or 3 planning directors, and he will continue. He will continue to do so. So I'll be here if you have any questions. But Mr. Dobromilski is doing all the heavy lifting on the case.
Thank you. This is a hearing for Landwind Development Corporation, preliminary and final major subdivision and site plan with variances for 725 and 823 Herrontown and 915 Mount Lucas, block 1001, lots 1, 2, 14. File number P1818 648 SPFP. Mr. Bodenheimer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to ask, I was advised by staff that there were some limits on my ability to participate based on my not having been present at earlier discussions of this, and I was wondering if I could get some advice on what exactly I am permitted to do as part of this hearing this evening.
Thank you for asking that. And we have asked people to go through hours and hours of video. And Mr. Muller, could you advise, Mr. Bodenheimer, do you want to stay and so that this counts towards being able to sworn for next time, or?
I mean, does being on this call enable me to avoid having to watch all of those previous levels, or do I have to do this and all the other stuff? Like, I'm not really sure what test I have to satisfy in order.
Yeah,
to be able to
that's what you'd have to do, Nat, because this is actually a continuation of the application, which was first filed quite some time ago. And for anybody to vote at the end, they're going to have to certify that they watch the videos. Or listen to the tapes.
So I'm unable to vote. So I'm unable to vote. I can listen, I can ask questions.
Yes, yes, that's because you would be given an opportunity if you want to listen to those tapes, because we're not going to finish tonight. Tom Letizia only has 2 experts. He doesn't have his whole team. And given that you have the opportunity to do so, you can participate fully as a board member.
And there will not be-
If you're going, if your intent would be to listen to the tapes.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just
It's
didn't,
a-
there
it's a
was
chore.
no possibility of my listening to the tapes by the time I was notified that that was the.
No, of
criteria
course
that I had
not.
to meet.
Right.
But there will not be a vote tonight because the hearing will continue with additional experts at a later date. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So then should not be any obstacle to my participating this evening. There are no limits.
Right.
Only your stamina, Nat.
I'm not sure I can say that I'll outlast anyone here, but I'll try.
Okay,
Thank-
so
thank you for the
so
clarification.
for the record, Mr. Bottingheimer is staying in the meeting and participating fully as an alternate. And we don't anticipate that there will be a vote this evening. So being that the board first took jurisdiction and headed down this road 1,534 days ago. So that's 4 years and 12 months and 14 days ago. I've asked Mr. Dobromilski if he could sort of, and I wanted also to thank the planning office, Kerry, for providing this record of minutes of the many meetings that that the planning board has participated in. But I've asked Mr. Dobromilski to give us sort of an overview of what's changed with this application in time, and specifically to the new reports that the board was provided to review. So do we want to, Mr. Mueller, do we want to swear in the municipal team at this point?
I think we should swear them in.
Okay.
Probably most, if not all, have already been sworn, but so that we don't make any error in that regard, I think we should swear them in again.
Okay, great. So you can do that, Mr. Mueller.
Okay, if the members of our team can raise their right hand. So that would be Derek and Dan, and
Victor
Justin, and Justin as well.
And
Justin is not participating. He did not write the report.
Okay.
And Joe Scupian.
And Joe, you here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If you can raise your right hands, do you swear or affirm that testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
I do.
I just want to
I
refer,
do.
just please state your full names for the record.
Dan Dobromilski.
Derek Bridger,
Victor Anosike.
Dan Weissman.
And Joe Scupian.
Thank you. So I asked Mr. Dobromilski if he would sort of bring us up to date with what's changed with this application. It is the same application as we began in on February the 7th, I think it was, of 2019.
Yes.
But a lot has changed since then.
Yes. I'm going to try and share my screen here. Can you all see that?
We're not seeing anything except, oh, there we are.
You got it?
Yep.
Thank you.
Is that okay? So this is the current application plan set. This is sheet 1 of 30 that I'm showing from the website. So the good evening, everyone. The Landwind Development Corporation is seeking preliminary final major subdivision for approval for now a 29 lot cluster development. As you indicated, this is, by my records, I think this will be the 10th hearing for this application. The last hearing was July 1st, 2021. It was a brief hearing trying to get this started again, I guess, after a break from COVID or during COVID. What you're seeing here is the location of the property. It's a 90 acre parcel bounded by Herntown Road, Montgomery Township to the north, where there's some multifamily housing. The property basically has kind of a flatter area up here and slopes from this side, the southeast side, up towards the northwest side. This
Down.
is the topography map.
It's
And-
down towards the northwest.
Can you see that?
Yeah,
I'm
I
sorry.
believe Mr.
You're down, you're
Mr.
right, I'm sorry,
Cohen-
it said up, you're right, correct.
Thank you.
I apologize, it slopes downward. I was thinking it's odd because it slopes to the north, in a way. There are some steep slopes through the middle of the site, if you recall, in the kind of flat area up there. This is the steep slopes map from the sheet. And then basically, this is the portion of the site. This is a cluster subdivision. If you recall, there were specific requirements to meet the ordinance provisions of the cluster. We had testimony that how they did meet that. The applicant may want to update that based upon the new plan. The reason you have a new plan is basically the previous wetlands LOI, letter of interpretation, expired. When they were applied for and given a new LOI, the buffer for the wetlands was increased to 150 feet, which then required some reconfiguration of the subdivision lot lines for both the cluster plan and the by right plan, which they did submit. The by right plan does have conforming lots based upon our analysis. So the changes are that there's a reduction by one lot, basically, into the cluster. If you recall, the cluster did include some bonus provisions for the amount of open space provided, for the walking paths, and for dedication of a property for affordable housing, which gave them a bonus of several lots to get the number up to, at the time, 30, but now 29. The property is, this portion of the property is was probably historically farmed, but it now is kind of revegetated with some early successional vegetation, but their property contains a lot of existing mature woodland, if you recall. Some of that, the stormwater improvements will occur in that area. I'm just kind of skimming through here. Here's an overall again with the this cluster design. So this is sheet 8 of 30, and you can see there's some stormwater improvements in these two locations. The configuration is kind of similar to what we saw before. There's a bit of a buffer offset on the east side from an existing residential neighborhood. And the lots are about, what was it? They were roughly half acre lots. And you can see the paths through the open space in these locations. If you recall, there were some streams and such going through the property on the left side over here. So the main change is really the LOI and the impact it had. There were some questions about were there any changes to the interpretation of the wetlands relative to the entry road. If you remember, there were 2 crossings here at this point down at the bottom of the sheet, and the applicant may want to offer some testimony about how the LOI or the new interpretation of the wetlands affects that or not. And they also may want to update any of the environmental aspects of the application based upon the new information that was provided. I think you have updated reports from me. As also the engineering and zoning report has been updated. You have a new traffic report because I believe you have a new traffic consultant, and the stormwater was changed pretty dramatically. And you have a report from your stormwater consultant as well. So I think that's pretty much the summary of it, if there's any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Dobromilsky from board members at this point? Would any of the other professionals like to summarize their reports? Anything that's changed about the reports since we last took this up? Mr. Weissman or Mr. Bridger? I'm just affording the opportunity. You don't have to if you, Mr. Weissman.
Sure. No, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to put a clarification out there. I was obviously not here for any of the prior hearings. So the report that was issued through the Engineering and Zoning Office is a comprehensive new report, which incorporated some of the language with the previous report, but also was a full reevaluation by Derek and myself. So a lot of that you'll see as duplication, but there are some additional comments from each of us in there. Nothing really further to add at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Weissman. Any questions from board members for Mr. Weissman? Mr. Anasoke, since yours was a new report, would you like to summarize your report?
Yes. Good evening. My report, I broke it into two phases, the traffic and the site plan. The main concern I do have will be with the traffic operation. And there are issues with the site intersection site distance. The location of the driveway does not meet the intersection site distance. I do the report from the applicant, did some assessment, and because of the curve at the end of it, they assumed that traffic will be traveling at that 15 miles per hour. Typically, the site distance is based on the design speed, which is about 5 miles above the posted speed limit. The posted speed limit along that Herringtown Road in that frontage of the site is 35 miles. So for a design speed of a posted speed of 35 miles per hour, design speed will be 40 miles per hour. And so the calculation for that based on the AASHTO standards will require 445 feet for a motorist that is stopped at the site driveway to be able to see an approaching vehicle in order to make a safe left turn onto Herringtown Road. Now, because of the curve coming into that straight alignment, the posted speed on the curve is 15 miles per hour. So the applicant is suggesting that we use that 15 miles per hour will be the speed that the motorists will probably be approaching. I don't think that there's a good 335 or more between the curve and the driveway. I don't believe that motorists turning off the curve will continue at 15 miles an hour through that frontage. As a matter of fact, it will seem like that will be the point where people will be accelerating upwards which is akin to putting a driveway in like an acceleration lane. So the site distance will be a problem. I had suggested in the report that they should consider aligning this driveway with the Stonehill Church driveway, because at that location, it meets the adequate sight lines from that location. That is the main issue I have with the location of the driveway. Every other thing in terms of the site plan has to do with pedestrian circulation. There was no circulation of trucks, fire trucks into the site, because Harrington Road is a very narrow, and it seems like the driveway, they're proposing a boulevard type of driveway with a center curbing in the. So I would like to see like the turning of a fire truck into and out of that Harrington Road to the site, just to make sure there's no encroachment into the median of that boulevard. The other things was with the site, the crosswalks that need to be provided at the intersections to be ADA compliant. The master plan has a bike path on the south side of Harrington Road, recommending that they extend their sidewalk on the north part to a point where in future there will be some kind of connection across Harrington Road for people using the bike to connect to the bike path on the south side. Every other thing is more about signing, and which I think they can easily do and show us. That's a brief summary of my report.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Anasoki. Are there questions from board members? Mr. Cohen and then Mr. O'Donnell.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I understood clearly the idea of relocating the driveway into the site to align with All Saints Church driveway is partly for the site distances, but also for my reading of the report would help to reduce conflicts between turning traffic coming out of those driveways. I just wanted to confirm I understood that correctly.
That's correct. Because the way the driveway is located now, it's probably 150 feet offset from the church driveway. And I do understand the church traffic it just peaks in the weekends on Sundays. But then there's a lot of conflicts for traffic turning in a scenario where you have traffic coming from the church. So yes, it will reduce a lot of conflict points.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just clarifying, Councilman Cohen, I think you meant Stonehill Church when you said All Saints, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so
I'm confusing our two applications.
You're in the previous application. Mr. O'Donnell and then Mr. Chow.
Thank you. Mr. Anasoki, I just want to confirm that you said that the design speed should be based on 40 miles an hour, and the applicant is suggesting that the design speed should be based on 20 miles an hour. Is that correct?
Well, the arguing, his contention is that because traffic is rounding the curve at 15 miles per hour, and the calculation is based on that. So with 15 miles per hour, the site distance is 170 feet. So he's contending that that's enough for any motorist coming out of the site to see, because it has approximately 300 feet. But I'm saying that even though people are rounding the curve at 15 miles per hour, the 15 miles per hour is just a warning sign. It's advisory. It's not the regulated sign on that road. So the calculation has to be based on the posted speed, which is 35 miles per hour for a design speed of 40 miles per hour. They can recommend, they can pursue a scenario where you can regulate a reduced speed along that frontage, but that will require an engineering study or go through a statutory regulations for NJ Title 39 statutes.
Okay, thank you very much. That answers the question that I had.
Thank you, Mr. Chow.
This is a question for Mr. Dobromilsky. If that driveway is moved to align with Stone Hill Church's driveway, what's the implication with the wetland setback?
So I just shared my screen again, so that this is sheet 8. I mean, as you can see here, that this textured elements here on the plan that I'm kind of circling with my cursor, I believe that's where the wetlands are. And when, from my recollection from the testimony, they tried to pick the narrowest points for the crossing. There may even be some existing crossings there for driveways, or I think this is actually the driveway. But there were some spots here where they thought that was the best place to cross. These are proposed pipes, I'm sorry. So that, I'm not sure it would be easy for them to shift the driveway and still get the required permitting for the wetlands encroachments. They were trying to do the least amount of encroachment in the way they were doing it. That's my recollection, and why they were coming up with this location. But we can get testimony from the applicant on that to clarify exactly what the options are and what the constraints are in that case.
Because it's shifting to the left, right? And you hit where those three.
This is the road
That's
here,
it,
the
right?
bend in the road right here. Currenttown. Isn't the entrance over here to the church? Let me
Oh,
see
you're moving it to the right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
see if it shows up. Sorry if this is dizzying. Oh no, well, the aerial
Here we
doesn't have the church on it. Sorry about that. I guess
I see.
the aerial's
Okay,
pretty
thank
old. So
Okay.
my recollection was the church entrance was over further to the right. But
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Other questions from board members for Mr. Anasoki? Then I'd ask Mr. Scupian if he could summarize the findings of his report for the board, since it involves standards that change from the time of application.
Yes, certainly. Good evening, folks. The stormwater, the site is a major development as defined by the latest or the current Princeton Stormwater Control Ordinance, which means that it has to meet stormwater quantity and quality control, also has to meet groundwater recharge requirements, has to do all three by meeting the green infrastructure requirements that are inherent in all three of those requirements, as well as the ordinance's low impact development requirements. And that is the latest ones as of, I guess it is March of 20. Last couple of years get a bit fuzzy. Anyway, it's the current ordinance. It is different than the previous ordinance. Based upon my review of the information that we have so far submitted, which consists of the site subdivision plans that were submitted back in October of 2022, and then a revised stormwater management report that we received back at the beginning of March, and then other data that's been submitted to me, mainly by email, working with the applicant's site engineer. Based on that information, the project meets all of those requirements. Now, when I say it meets, I mean that based upon all of the calculations and the backup data that is inside that stormwater management report, and based upon the information that's provided so far on those subdivision plans, going through all those computations, all that data, that information demonstrates compliance with the quantity, quality, recharge, green infrastructure, and low impact development. However, what's detailed in my report is that those conclusions are really based upon the information that I have right now. And that we need, let's say my report really has 3 classes of comments. One is I need more data to back up what is mainly in the stormwater management report. Based upon what's in that report, all the calculations look fine, but I need data to back that up, primarily soil testing data to make sure that the proposed stormwater management measures work. And then also some form of certification that the testing that is behind all that data was done in compliance with the ordinance, with the DEP stormwater management rules, and primarily the DEP's stormwater BMP manual. It's a very complicated design. It involves, if you recall, on the Terhune redevelopment next to the Princeton Shopping Center, it was 3 dozen, I believe, underground stormwater basins, porous paving on top, and then a stone storage bed underneath. In that case, they were going to be providing water quality treatment with this porous paving, and then detention below the porous paving in stone beds to meet the quantity requirements. There were no recharge requirements there. Here, all 3 requirements have to be met: quantity, quality, and recharge. The way that's going to be done is, again, porous paving to provide water quality from all of the motor vehicle surfaces, and then infiltration of that same water quality storm into the ground. So technically they're providing double water quality treatment. That infiltration of those smaller storms will also meet the site's recharge requirement, again, based upon all the calculations in the report. Overflows from those structures, though, will go down to either a smaller bioretention detention basin or a much larger infiltration detention basin. And those facilities will provide all of the quantity requirements. Okay. Now, when I say complicated, it is. There's 52 of these small scale porous paving infiltration recharge basins throughout the project site. Again, all of the motor vehicle surface, all of the driveways, all of the roads will be porous paving, and then at intervals along all that paving, there'll be 52 separate recharge infiltration basins to provide the quality and the recharge. And then structures inside those underground basins underneath the paving will then overflow and discharge down to the smaller or the larger basin. So that's another part of the requirements in my report is details. It's a very, very complicated design. Right now, there are really no details being provided as to how the water gets out of those 52 individual underground basins, how the water stays separate from all the other 51 at each basin. How does that happen? What do the outlet structures look like? Again, the computations show that it will work, but we're not dealing with computations. We need to make sure it will work. So we'll need, in addition to the backup data and the certification that all the infiltration testing was done correctly, we need, and also supply some data for some of these sites that were not in the engineering report I have now. We also need details of how are these facilities, these underground facilities particularly, exactly what are they going to look like? How are they going to be built? How are they going to collect water? How are they going to discharge water? How are they going to act? How are they going to function independent of each other, which is what the assumptions are. And then the last thing on my report, there are, in going through those September subdivision plans, there's, again, as usual on most projects, there's just some errors that need to be corrected, drafting errors, something that would refer to, a pipe being a certain size on the plans, but it doesn't agree with what the report. So that's not, that's not unusual. Okay, it's mainly providing the backup data that the design is based upon as detailed in the stormwater management plan, and then also details on the plans that match those computations that show exactly how these things are going to work. How are they going to be accessed? How can they be inspected? How can they be maintained? Things like that.
Thank you, Mr. Scupian. Are questions from board members for Mr. Scupian? Seeing none, I think it's time to Mr. Cohen.
Yeah, I'm sorry to be hesitant again, but I feel like I read somewhere that there was some question about the class of dam.
Yes, thank you,
that
sir.
would be at the retention, the large retention basin. If you could talk to that a little bit.
Yeah, thank you, sir. That's an excellent point, and I was trying to keep this simple. Yes, the larger infiltration detention basin, which is further down the slope to the north, just above Van Horn Brook, and that will discharge into Van Horn Brook, meets the geometry requirements of a dam. So by the state's Safe Dam Act and by the state's dam safety standards, that basin, the embankment around that basin will be considered a dam, which means it must meet the dam safety standards. Under those standards, there's 4 classes of dam. This one meets the lowest class of dam, meaning class 4, okay, based upon its geometry. It's less than a certain height, it has less than a certain maximum storage volume, and it has less than a certain amount of drainage area. However, there's one other requirement for class 4 dams that is, it's not numerical. It's not so much acres of drainage area and so many acre feet of storage. The requirement is that if it were to fail, if there were going to be any kind of failure, that it would not cause damage downstream that would bump it up into a higher class of dam, a class 1 or a class 2 dam. And so we just need to make sure of that, particularly with the location right upstream of Van Horn Brook, but primarily right near the boundary between Montgomery and between Princeton. There are some developments on the opposite side of Van Horn Brook. So it's standard procedure, let's say, in designing a basin like this, that we need to have clarification that besides meeting the simple geometric or dimensional requirements of a class 4 dam, that it doesn't create a hazard downstream that would cause it to be a higher class. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Other questions from board members? Seeing none, I think it's time to hear from the applicant. So, Mr. Letizia, would you care to swear in en masse the people who will be testifying?
Sure, we could do that first, and then I'd like to make some preliminary comments. If
the members of the applicant's team can raise their right hands.
So that will be Mr. Brown and Mr. Kovacs.
Okay. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
So sworn or affirmed. To each of you, please state your full name and spell your last name.
Michael
Kovacs, Kovacs. I'm with Ecol Sciences, Inc. of Rockaway, New Jersey.
T. Jeffrey Brown. I'm the engineer for the project, and I'm the president of Princeton Junction Engineering.
Thank you. Okay, Tom.
Okay. Again, just to make it clear for the record, Tom Letizia, I'm an attorney for Lamwin Development Corp., the applicant for this application. As was indicated by the chair, this is a continuation of the hearing on Lamwin's subdivision and site plan application for proposed residential development on its 90+ acre parcel on the northerly side of Harrytown Road, known as lots 1, 2, and 14 in block 1001 on the tax map. And the site is located within the RA, RB, and OR1 zone districts. A notice was previously provided for the March 2nd, 2023 meeting date of the planning board, at which time the board publicly announced the application would be carried to this evening without the requirement for further notice. As you all may recall, at least those who were on the board 3 years ago, the last hearing, or at least substantive hearing on this matter, was held back on March 5th of 2020, and that was in person. The board was hearing testimony from Mr. Afrin's experts at that time. And I believe that Mr. Blaine Rothhauser, Mr. Afrin's biologist, was testifying when the hearing was adjourned due to the hour. And then the world changed, as we all experienced. Since the applicant has now submitted revised plans and information, we believe it would make a more efficient and streamlined process if the applicant presents its amended plan, and it sounds like the board chair agrees with that. But unfortunately, while I'm intending to call 4 witnesses, only 2 are available this evening. So in response to the concern about whether or not members would be eligible to vote this evening, that is not a real concern. This will be carried to a future date. So hopefully those members who were not on the board at the time of the earlier hearings will have the opportunity to review those proceedings and certify that they're eligible. During the 3-year hiatus, 2 state regulatory changes occurred impacting the proposed project, resulting in the need for the application to amend its plan. And you've heard about these from your professionals. First, as Mr. Dobromelski outlined, NJDEP issued an extended letter of interpretation in April of 2022. That changed the resource value classification of all freshwater wetlands on the site from intermediate, to which has an associated transition area of 50 feet, to exceptional with an associated transition area of 150 feet. The second regulatory change was the adoption of new stormwater rules by NJDEP in 2021 and since enacted by Princeton, requiring the implementation of green infrastructure, best management practice measures in any stormwater system. So thus in October of last year, Lamwin submitted revised materials amending its application. And as Mr. Dobromelski reviewed with you, the layout of the subdivision plan has been reconfigured to avoid disturbance to the NJDEP regulated areas, reducing the number of residential lots from 30 to 29 and slightly modifying the entrance road. None of the reconfigured lots contain freshwater wetlands or transition areas. And the entrance road does not disturb these areas except where necessary to provide safe access from Herringtown Road. The stormwater management system for the development has been completely redesigned, as you heard from Mr. Skupian, in order to fully comply with the updated NJDEP and Princeton stormwater requirements. I would like to emphasize that the lot and roadway reconfigurations reflected in the latest plans do not alter the basic layout of the cluster subdivision plan in any significant way from what the applicant originally presented to the board, including the setting aside of over 74% of the tract as open space with public access, and the dedication of a 3-acre parcel to Princeton for future affordable housing. The plan as revised remains fully compliant with all applicable ordinances of Princeton Land Use Code, and no variances or waivers are necessary. I heard Chairman Quinn when he was announcing this application that they're with variances. There are no variances being sought with this application.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. I was reading from a previous version, so
No, I fully
appreciate you,
understand.
appreciate
I'm
you
just-
clarifying.
Okay. So we will have testimony confirming these statements. But given this fact, the prior testimony in this matter over the past 8 or 9 hearings, depending how you count them, remains relevant and effective, except to the extent of the changes being discussed this evening and in future hearings. So with that, Chairman Quinn, I'm ready to present testimony from my 2 witnesses. So I first will call D. Jeffrey Brown.
Tom, I think Jeff has been qualified previously, correct?
He has, yes, and he can go through his qualifications again.
Why don't we do
Jerry,
that really quickly?
Sure. Mr. Brown, can you please provide a brief description of your both educational and professional background, please?
Okay, I have a Bachelor of Science degree in Civil Engineering from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. I am a licensed professional engineer, a licensed land surveyor, and a licensed professional planner in New Jersey. I've been licensed as an engineer for about 46 years, and as a planner and land surveyor for approximately 25 years. I'm also the president of Princeton Junction Engineering, and I've prepared plans in Princeton and surrounding municipalities in Mercer and other counties over the course of the past 45 years.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. We accept your qualifications.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Brown, I believe you have a number of exhibits that you're going to be presenting, and with Kerry's and Jerry's help on numbering, I think we may be up to 17. Is that correct?
I thought it was 16. Kerry, what do you have?
I have 17 as the next one in the sequence.
The next one is 17, yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I think each of these slides will be marked individually. So, so the first one that's coming up, let's start, Mr. Brown, by having you identify this exhibit, please.
Okay, this exhibit is a site rendering. It's basically the layout of the project, which has been rendered to show the different surfaces. On the plan, the green, the darker green is wooded area, the lighter green is lawn areas, the gray areas are the roadways and the driveways, and the brown areas are the buildings. There's also the path that's shown in brown, and The sand filters in the detention basins are shown in a tan color also.
So we'll mark this as, and this was prepared by your firm, is that correct?
Yes, it was.
Does it have a date on it?
I can't see it without, a minute, I have the original here. It's dated April 17th, 2023.
Thank you. So this will be A17. Please proceed.
Okay, this shows the revised development proposal. And as has been discussed before, it was revised in response to the changes in the wetlands identified the wetlands now as exceptional resource value with a buffer of 150 feet as opposed to intermediate resource value, which it had previously been identified, which had a 50-foot buffer. And as Tom mentioned, the new plans also respond to the changes in the state stormwater management rules that took effect in March of 2021, and that now require the use of green infrastructure measures to control site runoff. You can see from the exhibit that the new cluster design proposes only 29 lots instead of the 30 previously proposed. The new plan also proposes a 3-acre lot fronting out on Mount Lucas Road at the northwesterly corner of the property, which is slated for dedication to the municipality for affordable housing. We're also proposing an open space lot consisting of 67.77 acres, or 74.8% of this overall 90.62 acre tract. And that open space is proposed to be owned by the Homeowners Association. The proposed residential lots will range in size from 21,130 square feet, which is just slightly less than half an acre, up to 35,981 square feet, and will occupy a total of 15.34 acres of the site. The proposed roadway dedications, which include our internal roadways and dedication of additional right-of-way along Herrontown Road, totals 4.53 acres. Wetlands on the site total 6.99 acres or 7.7% of the tract, and transition areas cover 9.4 acres or 10.4% of the tract. Flood hazard areas encompass approximately 4.5 acres, nearly all of which overlap the wetlands and transition areas. The total area of all of these environmentally sensitive features, accounting for the overlaps, is 16.4 acres or 18.1% of the tract. The proposed cluster development will disturb a total of 27.4 acres or 30.2% of the tract. Of this total disturbance, only 0.12 acres is wetlands and state open water disturbance, 0.07 acres for the entrance road crossings, and 0.05 acres for the utility crossings. There will also be some disturbance to transition areas in connection with these crossings. There will be approximately 4.5 acres of disturbance to the proposed open space for construction of utilities and drainage infrastructure. This will leave 63.3 acres or 93.3% of the open space and 69.8% of the total tract undisturbed as preserved open space. The ordinance requires that 60% of the open space be preserved open space. Approximately 1.8 acres of the 4.5 acre open space disturbance is attributable to the 2 stormwater basins proposed in the open space. The ordinance would allow 4% of the total tract area, or 3.62 acres of the open space, to be used for detention basins while still being qualified as open space. I'd like to just briefly describe the proposed improvements for the subdivision, as they're very much the same as those were proposed previously for our cluster plan. The roadways will be 30-foot wide, porous pavement, fully curbed with Belgian block, and 5-foot wide, porous concrete sidewalks, all in 50-foot wide right-of-ways. There's also the entrance boulevard, which consists of 2 15-foot wide porous pavement travel lanes that are separated by a 20-foot wide landscaped island, also fully curved with Belgian block and having 5-foot wide porous concrete sidewalks on both sides. These roadways will be underlain by clean stone with a minimum depth of 24 inches, which will store and infiltrate runoff as part of the stormwater management system. Public sewers, the lots will be served by public sewers, which will run from the site westward through the open space to connection point in Herrontown Lane, just east of Mount Lucas Road. Public water and gas will be supplied via water and gas mains in the proposed road and connecting to water and gas mains existing in Herrontown Road. Wire-served utilities will be run underground and will also connect to the existing lines in Herrontown Road. As far as landscaping, we are proposing street trees along both of the proposed subdivision streets. And Dan notes in his report that there is a deficiency in the number of required plantings of trees, and we would propose to work with Dan and landscape subcommittee to identify other areas on the site where additional trees can be planted. And I think that's particularly true of the 100-foot wide strip that separates these lots from the lots fronting on Herrontown Lane. And the other area that would benefit from some additional landscaping would be the detention facilities. I also note that the current plan will result in a reduction in tree removals from the previous plan, from 682 trees to 489 trees, which is a reduction of 193 trees or 28% of the total. And this is largely due to the shrinking of the large detention basin in the northwesterly portion of the tract. Streetlights, we're currently proposing Cobra Head type streetlights at all street intersections, on the outside of all curves, and at the end of each cul-de-sac. We note the Environmental Commission's recommendation regarding the type of streetlights, and we will work with your professional staff and the Environmental Commission to select suitable poles and fixtures. Each proposed cluster lot will take access via driveway connection to the proposed streets. All driveways, like the roadways, will be constructed with porous pavement underlain with clean stone as part of the stormwater management system. Stormwater is being controlled in a variety of ways, and all the measures proposed are categorized as green infrastructure. First, the porous pavement surfaces will capture the runoff falling on them and flowing to them, and will temporarily store that runoff in the stone beds below the pavement. The porous pavement will provide water quality treatment for this runoff via infiltration into the subsoils. The stone beds under the driveways and roadways will be divided into individual ponds, and each driveway pond will have piping connecting it to an adjoining roadway pond, which will allow for further infiltration and temporary floodwater storage. Each roadway pond will be connected to a piped header system, which will convey excess stormwater to a standard roadway pipe and inlet system designed to accommodate the 100-year storm. This excess stormwater will flow to a large-scale infiltration detention basin located just uphill of Van Horn Brook, where it will be subject to further stormwater qualities treatment or discharge overland to Van Horn Brook. There's one exception to the stormwater measures described. Stormwater from the portion of the boulevard entrance that crosses the wetlands will be treated somewhat differently because it's not possible to infiltrate stormwater in these areas. The porous pavement will be underdrained with perforated pipe, which will be connected to the pipe and inlet system and conveyed to a small-scale bioretention basin, which is located at the southwesterly corner of the lot area. Water quality and detention will still be provided by the porous pavement, but additional quality treatment and detention storage, as well as groundwater recharge, will be provided by the bioretention basin. Excess runoff will be discharged on grade through an outlet control structure. We've incorporated a number of non-structural stormwater management practices into this project that address the items in NJDEP's non-structural strategy checklist. First, we're protecting areas that provide water quality benefits or areas particularly susceptible to erosion and sediment loss. Clearly designing the subdivision under the cluster provisions of the ordinance and citing the proposed improvements on the least environmentally sensitive portions of the site, avoiding stream corridors, wetlands, transition areas, and steeper slope areas satisfies this objective. Secondly, we'll minimize impervious surfaces and break up or disconnect the flow of runoff over impervious areas. Again, designing as a cluster reduces required impervious surfaces by reducing the total length of required roadway, and developing smaller lots reduces allowable impervious coverage. By way of example, 24-acre conventional residential lots could be permitted to have impervious cover of 14%, or a total of 11.2 acres, whereas 30 half-acre cluster lots would each be permitted to have 36% coverage for a total of 5.4 acres. So it's almost a factor of two, roughly a factor of two as far as impervious coverage on the lots. Third, maximize the protection of natural drainage features and vegetation. This is one of the primary advantages of developing the site under the cluster provisions of the ordinance. Obviously, we're preserving a large portion of the site in open space. Minimizing soil compaction, we've included notes on the plan to require that all of the proposed lot grading for lawn areas be done with lightweight equipment. Also, this project will be subject to the soil decompaction and testing requirements of the Mercer County Soil Conservation District. Six, provide preventive source controls. All the drainage inlets will be constructed with frames and grates limiting trash and debris from entering the storm system. In addition, each detention basin outlet structure will be fitted with trash racks to trap and retain trash and prevent it from being carried into downstream waterways. This layout and the improvements for this cluster subdivision plan are completely compliant with New Jersey residential site improvement standards. I know that Mr. Wiseman points out in his report that there are several elements that are non-compliant with your municipal ordinance, but it's my opinion that the RSIS requirements regarding these items supersede the municipal requirements. If we can move now to exhibit number 2, which is the conventional subdivision plan that forms the basis for the lot count on the cluster plan.
Okay, again, so this is a plan prepared by your office, Mr. Brown?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
And again, can you provide the date of it, please?
Okay, let me see if I can do that. I can't offhand. Randy, if you could zoom in on the date, possibly. There we go. That's also April 17th, 2023.
So this is conventional subdivision plan. And this
Exhibit,
is,
yes.
Right, and this is A18 for the record.
A18.
Correct.
So this exhibit shows the layout that forms the basis for our cluster plan lot count. As described in Dan Dobromilski's report, the majority of the property lies in the RA zone, which is a 4-acre zone, with a small portion in the RB, which is a 3-acre zone, and about 1 acre at the northeast corner, which is in the OR1 zone. This conventional subdivision conforms to the more restrictive standards of the RA zone. Every lot shown on the plan contains a minimum of 4 acres, including lot 1.11, which is the lot in the northwesterly corner, which contains more than 4 acres, excluding the land that's within the OR zone. Every lot also meets all of the bulk standards of the RA zone. The plan was developed based upon the expanded buffers of our new LOI, and each lot provides sufficient buildable area for construction of a dwelling and access driveway for each lot. You'll note that the proposed roadway takes access from Herrontown Road in the same location as in the cluster plan, and that's based on the environmental considerations of the wetlands and buffers. Although this plan is compliant with the standards for a conventional subdivision in the RA zone, it would have significant environmental consequences beyond those of the cluster layout. Particularly notable is that it would require a crossing of Van Horn Brook, which would result in significant disturbance of additional wetlands and would impact flood hazard area associated with the brook. These activities would require additional NJDEP permitting as compared to the cluster plan. This plan will also have significantly greater impact on the track as a whole, as the development would be spread out over the entire 90-acre parcel. The nearly 75-acre open space parcel that will be created by the cluster plan would become part of the developed area under this plan, and no open space would be preserved.
Mr. Brown, let me just interrupt you for a moment. I want to call your attention to that OR1 area that you have shaded on this plan.
Yes.
I guess my question is that area, the acreage in that area, is that necessary in order for that residential lot to conform?
No, as I stated, that lot has sufficient area, has more than 4 acres without the portion that's in the OR1 zone.
Okay, and so no residential improvements are proposed in that OR1.
No, the house is shown as being in the RA zone, and it's noted on there 174,371 square feet in the RA zone only. So that lot would be conforming even without the OR1 portion.
Thank you.
Okay, if we could now go to the cluster density bonus calculation exhibit.
Okay, just identify this slide, please, Mr. Brown.
It's entitled Thompson Woods Cluster Subdivision, and it was prepared by my office on 4/4/2019, but is still applicable to the current plan. Except that it says 20 residential units, and it is now 19 residential units.
Okay, and
I'm sorry
this is-
for interrupting. How much longer do you think your testimony will be? Do you have more time? Can we take a 5-minute break, or are you almost done?
We can take a break, Ms. Phillips. That's fine.
Thank you. Is that acceptable, Chair?
Thank you, Carrie. I was looking for a space to get in a break, so I'm showing 9:19. So why don't we meet back at 9:25?
Thank you.
Thank you.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay.
So, Mr. Brown, we're in the middle
back.
of, yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Letizia, continue, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. Quinn. So,
I'm
Mr.
sorry,
Brown-
Chair. I don't think Phil's back yet.
Oh,
His camera's on, but he's not on screen.
Thank you, David.
yes, thank you, David.
Sorry.
This
No
meeting is
worries.
being recorded.
Okay, Mr. Letizia,
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Mr. Brown, I believe you were in the middle of identifying this exhibit, please.
Yeah. Yes, this is the calculation that establishes the cluster density bonus.
It was prepared by your firm. Is that correct?
Pardon me, I didn't.
It was prepared by your firm, is that correct?
Yes, it was prepared by our firm on April 4th of 2019, but is still applicable to the current project.
Okay, and we'll mark this as A19.
Okay, it first shows that the conforming subdivision plan yields 20 residential units, and that is correct, as we just showed that plan. The elements of the density bonus, first of all, 5,000 linear feet of walking path, which we have on our plan, entitles you to a bonus of 2 units. Secondly, 74% plus common open space also would give you a bonus of 10% or 2 units. And for the affordable housing dedication of the 3-acre parcel, we have a 90.62 acre tract, 74% plus common open space, 90% of open space is preserved, 90% plus. We have a 100-foot landscape buffer to the adjoining lots on Herrontown Lane. And the 3-acre parcel is being donated to Princeton for affordable housing, which entitles us to a 30% bonus or 6 lots for a total cluster density bonus of 50%, which is the maximum allowed under the ordinance, or 10 lots, which would allow us to have 30 lots. And as we've stated, we have reduced that now to 29 lots. So that's the basis for the lot count on the cluster subdivision. If we could move now to the wetlands with the original cluster.
Okay, again, please identify this plan once we can all see it.
This plan is the original cluster plan showing the 50-foot and the 150-foot wetlands transition areas. It's also dated April 17th, 2023.
And prepared by your firm?
Prepared by my office, yes.
Okay, this is A20.
Right. Okay, so the shaded area on this plan indicates the area that of the new 150-foot buffer that impacts the lots under the old cluster plan. The heavy dashed line with a single dot is the old 50-foot wide wetlands transition area, and the dashed line above it is the 150-foot wide wetlands transition area. So you can see that a number of the lots were significantly impacted by the expansion of the buffers from 50 to 150 feet, as was the road. And then if we can move to the next exhibit, which is the new cluster plan, the revised cluster plan showing the wetlands transition areas. Okay, so this is the revised cluster plan with 50 and 150-foot buffers. Wetlands transition areas also prepared April 17th, 2023 by my office.
A21 for the record.
Correct.
Okay, so now you can see the shaded area again is the area between the 50-foot and the 150-foot buffer. And you can see that the lots and the interior roadways have been shifted to avoid encroachment into the new 150-foot wide wetlands transition areas. So that really is the basis for this revised application with the 29 lots. Okay, if we can move to the next exhibit, which is a slope analysis for the original cluster plan. So there was
Wait a minute.
concern.
We have to identify this, Mr. Brown, before you proceed.
Okay, this is slope analysis for the original cluster plan, also dated April 17th, 2023, and prepared by my office.
Right. So Jerry, this is A23.
Is it A23 or A22?
It's 22, I think.
22.
I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. A22, you're correct. Thank you.
So there was concern with the original cluster plan, particularly in the northwesterly portion of the lots, lots 1.22 through 1.26, where the backs of the lots did extend into the 15% slopes. None of this development takes place on anything greater than 25% slopes, which would prohibit residential development on the property. And we also looked at some alternate grading on some of these lots under the original plan, showing how some of these slopes could be mitigated by having walkout basements and building some low walls and doing some creative grading. And if you could put up the next plan, which is the same slope analysis but based on the revised cluster. And this plan is slope analysis for revised cluster plan, also dated April 17th, 2023, and prepared by my office.
This will be A23. Just give it a second. Okay.
Okay, and looking at the same area, and unfortunately we can't put these up side by side, but if you compare the two exhibits, you'll see that the impact to those slopes is pretty much identical to what it had been in the previous plan, that there's no further encroachment into those slopes based on the 29 unit plan. So in reconfiguring the subdivision, we didn't push it further to the northwest in order to get more room. We basically kept the lots in that area the same. So the impacts to slopes will be no greater than they were under the 30 lot plan. The next exhibit shows a slight reconfiguration of the lots at the southeasterly corner.
Mr. Brown, before we go to the next exhibit, but is there a change in the impacts to slopes down where you see the arrow that Mr. Curtis is indicating with his cursor?
There's really no significant change to the slopes anywhere on the site.
Okay. Great. We're now
So
going
we
to move on.
We can move to that next exhibit. Okay, this exhibit is entitled Suggested Lot Reconfiguration Plan, also prepared April 17th, 2023 by my office. And this plan was prepared in response to some interaction with the staff regarding what was categorized or classified as a flag lot. If you look at the dashed lines on this exhibit, that is the lot configuration that's shown on the current plans. And the solid lines that we're showing there are a possible reconfiguration, which it's somewhat more standard looking lots, eliminating the flag lot. I'll point out though that the flag lot under the cluster ordinance is really not a flag lot because it's only required to have 37.5 feet of frontage. And the flag lot, or what's called the flag lot, actually had 50 feet of frontage. So it actually was a conforming lot. But we understand that it does look like a flag lot. So this, if the board preferred this type of arrangement, we could easily revise the plan to reconfigure these lots. And again, this was prepared in reaction to comments from staff.
And Jerry, this is A24, this exhibit here.
Right, correct.
Right.
Okay, if we could move to the next exhibit. This exhibit is entitled Herringtown Road Widening, again prepared April 17th, 2023 by my office. And the point of this exhibit is to try to show what kind of impacts would be associated with widening Herringtown Road. And I think right off the bat, there's been considerable concern about the vernal pools in the southeasterly corner of the property. And you can see that the road widening, well, let me describe the road widening first. If you look at the right hand edge of what's up on the screen now, it shows 30-foot wide pavement. That is the recommendation from the municipality for the widening of Herringtown. Right now, it's approximately 24 feet wide. The dark lines would be the new edge of pavement. The dashed lines are the existing edge of pavement. And you can see that they're very close to the vernal pools. And also, pretty much along the entire length where we would be improving Herringtown Road, you'd be impacting wetlands and wetlands buffers. There are also roadside ditches in that area that would be impacted, and they would be regulated also by the DEP. So we just want to point out that if in fact we are required to widen Herringtown Road, that there will be significant environmental impacts to that. And that will in all likelihood require an individual wetlands permit. But that permit would be made by the township because it's a township improvement in a township.
Nope. Mr. Brown, we lost you. We lost your video and sounds like your sound.
So, Mr. Brown is still MIA.
May I take the moment just to ask a question?
I was going to ask whether we would, what Jerry's preference, advice would be as to whether we would wait until after Mr. Brown's total testimony to ask questions, or if your question's directed to Mr. Brown,
It is
he
not.
doesn't, okay, he doesn't
It's a
appear.
question about the record.
Oh, okay.
I mean, and the question is what the basis for the recommendation for a widening of Herrontown Road was.
Okay, maybe
That's a
Steph can answer that.
I can jump right in and handle that. So that is Herrontown Road is in the master plan to be widened. So that recommendation of the minor collector for that widening, that's where that comes from, in the circulation element of the master plan.
Can I ask what was the basis in the master plan for that widening, and what, is it safety? Is it volume? Is it, I mean, what, and is that how long ago in the past was that recommendation made? Is there any possibility that might be revisited in the master plan update? Is it just curious what background there is on it?
As far as I can tell, it came out in the 2017 or possibly earlier reexamination report. If that's going to be addressed in the updated master plan, I can't really speak to that.
And are the applicants responsible for paying it, or what specifically is triggering a widening of the road, and in what ways would what road widening, I mean, in what way is it connected to the application, or is it purely a separate issue?
There is an off-track contribution for approved subdivisions that would be required for something like this, especially if it's consistent with the master plan. Believe the ordinance requires from the frontage of the property for which the subdivision is granted. So that's why we were from the frontage of Herrontown Road from one side down all the way to the other edge of the property.
And are there, I mean, it seems reasonable to me to be asking the question about, we should be comparing the impacts of a widening of the road with the magnitude of the impacts of the private application. I mean, it just seems reasonable that both things should be subject to the same.
If I can just make a quick comment, Nat. I don't know exactly where the road widening came from, but I think it did not come from, the bicycle master plan, which was adopted in 2017, which calls for a side path along Herrontown Road. So, I don't know where the widening really came from, but it's sort of not entirely consistent, I think, with the latest thinking about complete streets treatment here.
So I would point out that Mr. Weissman's and Mr. Bridger's memo on page 8 of 12 references 10B 1608 of the Princeton Land Use Code requiring the applicant to widen and reconstruct the road along the entire frontage of the property. And then there's the reference to it being in accordance with the master plan. So I think it's appropriate for the board to consider whether it wants to impose that. I believe I would look to Jerry for guidance on this.
All right, well, I'll just say that, I mean, it does seem a bit odd for the applicant to be governed by updated, stormwater management controls in a, and for a master plan. I mean, it seems like a master plan recommendation the dates prior to those stricter controls would not be, we wouldn't be sensitive to it, or those wouldn't be sensitive to the same, reconsideration. So I just want to, and I also guess I want to point out that obviously a wider road is a road in which is going to be more encouraging of people to make the kind of acceleration from 15 miles, an hour recommended to the 40-mile-an-hour mark, and will have impacts on the sight lines and braking distances and other things. The widenings are not going to do anything to encourage calmer traffic in this area. They'll only encourage, as far as I'm concerned, wilder traffic.
Well, I would say that the 30-foot width provides two 10-foot travel lanes and two 5-foot bike lanes. So again, I think this is for our deliberation and discussion, but the points are well made. Especially
You're asking
with
the right questions, Dan.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yay, gold star.
I see that Mr. Brown is trying to reconnect and log in. Just give us a couple more moments. I apologize for the interruption and delay here.
No worries.
I believe he was sharing the screen, so that might be holding him up. I don't know. So is there any way we can take that down?
Actually, it was Mr. Curtis that was sharing.
Mr. Curtis is doing, okay.
Yes.
Would it make any sense, Mr. Letizia, to move on to your other expert and come back to Jeffrey when he gets back on? Or do you not want to have discussion if Jeffrey's not present?
Yes, I don't think that will be wise. I prefer that we try to stay with Mr. Brown. I'm not sure what's going on. I'm going to go off video for a moment and see if I can reach him. Mr. Chairman, I'm unable to reach Mr. Brown at the moment, so maybe we give him till 10 o'clock, and if he's not back on, I guess we'll have to adjourn.
Okay, so why don't we take a 5-minute break? It's unusual to have 2 breaks, and reconvene at 10 and decide where we are then.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure. All right, Carrie, you want to stop the recording? There he is. Thank you. So, Mr. Letizia, our status?
The status is, Mr. Quinn, that Mr. Brown's not able to join us. We're not sure why. Must be a technical problem, and that can't be solved in 5 minutes. So we don't want to take up more of your time. It's already 10 o'clock, and I think it's best that we adjourn. Hopefully we can say to a date certain so we can avoid renoticing.
Okay.
Let's do that then. Okay.
Carrie, can we review the open upcoming dates and see if we can get the 2 Esquires to sync their calendars?
And to confirm that all of our people.
That the experts will be
and
available.
Dobromilsky including is available. Okay.
So do we want to not do that now or?
No, I
take it
think we
offline?
should. We
Okay.
have to carry the meeting. We have to come up with a date or else they have to renotice. So.
Okay.
I'm looking at the calendar and we have a matter that just came in today about the garage that was just approved by the site plan committee. An appeal was filed. I think we have to put them on fairly soon. So that's going to take the second meeting in June. So we have 2 meetings in June and I think they're getting very full and I really can't put them on that date. So the next
I think Jeff is in. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Okay. Wonderful.
We can still discuss the date, no?
Sure.
Okay, so how is July 6th?
Works for me.
Other than 2 months from now or 3 months.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, we have a large application on the 4th, a separate large application for the university on the 18th. And then on the 1st, we have a capital improvement review with our engineer. That will take some time. We have a concept plan. And then on the 15th, we have the appeal. We could put it on with the same night as the appeal. I don't know if Dan is available that night. I need to check with his schedule. So it could be the 15th and you'll be sharing the night, or it could be the 6th.
But which month are we?
I think
talking?
June 15th was the.
June 15th or July 6th.
We'll take the 15th of June.
I just want to mention, I'm going to be out of the country on the 15th of June. And since we have a fairly narrow margin, just need to make sure all the other members of the board will be available.
And you won't have it all to yourself. So can I recommend the 6th?
Yeah, I would go with that. I think it's important that David be here. And maybe we can
Yes.
maybe we can poll the our staff at this point and see about their availability. Dan, Derek, Dan Weissman.
Dan, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I'm available on the 6th of July. Yes, and well, I think June 15th is a third Thursday, so I should be available then too.
I'm not available the 15th of June, but I am available July 6th.
Okay.
I'm available both days. I don't know if we also want to check with Joe Scupian and Mr. Anasike.
Yeah, maybe they could. Are they still on?
Yes.
Yeah, right
No?
now, right now, I don't see a problem with the July date.
Okay,
I'm available too, July
Okay.
or June.
yeah, and it works for me.
July 6th then.
Mr. Efron?
Can I just have one moment to check on something? It'll take me about 30 seconds. I'll be right back on that date.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Maybe in the meantime, we can keep going, sure, and we can revisit it at the end.
That's fine for me.
No, I guess it's unfair.
Yeah, I
Mr.
think we should wait for
Yeah.
Mr. Efron's 30 seconds.
Sure, fair enough.
Thank you. I just wanted to be sure so we didn't have an issue later. That works for me, July 6th. The only thing is, I don't think we're getting to my experts at that point anyway, so I don't have their availability at this point, but I'm available. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So, Mr. Brown and Mr. Letizia,
Yes, so,
please continue.
yes, thank you. So, Mr. Brown, I believe when we lost you, you were in the middle of, or at least finishing up discussing the Herringtown Road widening exhibit, 8025.
Okay, I'm not exactly sure at what point you lost me. I thought I had gotten into the reports.
No, you didn't start that, but do you have
Okay.
anything more to say related to the Herringtown Road widening?
No, I think the point of that was just that it has significant environmental impacts to require that widening along Herringtown Road, and particularly to the vernal pools that seem to be of particular concern to the residents.
Okay, so now let's turn to the reports. And maybe we can start with Dan Weissman's report.
Okay, starting with that, on page 4, item 3.1 indicates the need for certain design waivers from the municipal code, which I think I already talked about a little bit. And it's our belief that these requirements have been superseded by the RSIS, and that we comply with all of the RSIS requirements.
So therefore, there would be no need for us to seek design waivers. Is that correct?
That's my opinion, yes.
Okay.
Okay, the next item on page 5, item 4.0, indicates our cluster plan will require individual wetlands permits. And although we do agree that wetlands permits are required, it's our understanding that we would qualify for general permits, those being a GP2 and a GP10A. But the municipality's permit for the widening of Herringtown Road would probably require an individual permit. The next comment on page 8, under staff comments number 1 at the top of the page, although we appreciate the comment on the terms of the ordinance requirements, we don't believe that either 2-access streets or a bike path with access to the street systems are practicable because of the environmental constraints on the site. We selected our entrance to the site very carefully based on the wetlands, and I don't believe there's another point of access from Herringtown Road, or for that matter from anywhere that would accomplish that goal of having 2 accesses. So we don't believe that that's a practical requirement.
Jeff, where are you? You're on page 8?
Page 8, staff comments number 1 at the top of the page.
Oh, hold on a second.
Mr. Brown, on that point, again, does our road layout and design comply with RSIS?
Yes, the boulevard entrance would comply with RSIS requirements.
So requiring this additional access would be a
Right.
more stringent requirement. It would be above and beyond what the RSIS requires.
That's right. Okay, moving on. Also on page 8, staff comment number 1 at the bottom of the page. Because of what we just went through on the Herringtown Road exhibit, we don't believe that the widening of Herringtown Road is either necessary or appropriate given the impacts to the sensitive environmental features, including the vernal pools. And we do question the approvability of DEP permitting for this widening. Moving to Joe Scopian's report, we're generally in agreement with the items in this report, with the possible exception of item 9 on page 5. That has to do with items in the NSPS spreadsheet, but subsequently we found out that that is not a something that's required, that's a municipal requirement, and so we may end up debating that issue in some other forum, particularly the Delaware Raritan Canal Commission, which does require that form.
So, Mr. Brown, just on that item. So given that submission of the NSPS spreadsheet is not a municipal requirement, that comment's really moot at this point, right?
Yeah, that's my understanding, yes. Okay, if we could move on to Dan Dobromilski's report. Again, we're in general agreement with most of the comments in that report. But just have a couple of comments. On page 2, item 1, state open waters are not subject to wetland buffers. That was a question in his report. In some cases, they may have riparian zones associated with them, but those buffers would not be impacted by the improvements that we're proposing. And as I stated previously in my testimony, the total calculated area of wetlands buffers, and flood hazard area on the tract is 16.4 acres or 18.1% of the tract. And then the only other item on page 3, item A, the updated area of utilities in the open space would be 2.6 acres, which is a slight reduction from the previous plan, which I believe had 3 acres of impact. And that's pretty much the end of my testimony.
Mr. Brown, I just have a few more questions for you. And this pertains to whether this updated plan complies with the applicable provisions of the residential cluster ordinance. So let me just ask you a few questions in that regard. There's a requirement in section 10B-189 that in order to protect environmentally sensitive lands, that the more fragile areas of the site remain in preserved open space. Is it your opinion that this updated plan complies with that?
Yes, absolutely.
And the permitted uses in a cluster includes single-family structures. Do we comply with that requirement?
Yes, we're proposing 29 single-family structures.
There's also a requirement in section 10B-191 A that a residential cluster shall consist of at least 6 contiguous acres. Does that meet, do we meet that requirement?
Yeah, clearly we're at 90.2 acres and that meets that requirement.
You already went through the permitted density within a cluster and the bonuses that are provided. I won't ask you to go through all that again. I think you provided extensive testimony in that regard. Just a little more on the affordable housing land dedication component of the plan. I believe you might have already testified to this, but just to reiterate, in order to be eligible for that bonus, the tract size must be at least 75 acres. Do we meet that requirement?
Yes, we do.
And the second criteria is that at least 70% of the tract must be common open space, of which at least 60% shall be preserved open space. They're dedicated to the municipality or maintained and owned by a homeowners association. Do we meet that requirement?
Yes, we meet both of those requirements.
And the third condition is that a minimum setback of 100 feet from off-track property lines. Do we meet that requirement?
Yes, we have the 100-foot open space strip between our lots and the lots on Herringtown Lane.
And you noted that we're proposing single-family structures. And in section 10B-192 of the cluster ordinance, which sets forth the standards for clusters in which less than 80% of the tract is devoted to open space. For single-family structures, the lot requirements are as follows: minimum width and frontage. No lot shall have a width or frontage less than 75 feet. Do we meet that requirement?
Yes.
Maximum depth. No lot shall have a depth of more than 3 times its width. Do we meet that requirement?
Yes, we do.
I'm sorry, can I just interrupt for a second? Going back one
Sure.
One step, the 75-foot minimum frontage, I thought we heard that the flag lot had less than that. Can you just specifically address that, Mr. Brown?
Yeah, actually, my understanding is that 37.5 feet is the frontage requirement. Were we talking about lot width possibly?
Maybe I'm referring to the wrong section, Mr. Brown.
Yeah, the lot frontage requirement is 37.5 feet. The lot width requirement is 75.
You agree with that, Mr. Letizia?
No lot shall have a width or frontage. So that's the way it's written, less than 75 feet. Well,
maybe one of our staff
Where did you
can,
get the 35 or 37 feet from?
The cluster zoning requirement, this is Dan Dobromowitz, the cluster zoning requirement that you're showing on your chart on sheet 7 of the plans indicates that the lot frontage is 37.5 and the lot width is 75 under the cluster.
I think what happened was the lot width and lot frontage were changed in 2018. The applicant filed the application prior to that change. So at the time of the application, the lot width was 50%, or the lot frontage, excuse me, was 50% of the lot width, which was a 37.5. So,
okay.
but the layout has changed And
Correct.
we're hearing that the new regulations apply in other regards. So I'm a little unclear.
Yeah, so if I could provide a little insight, we did check with Jerry Muller, and the time of application rule applied to the bulk requirements. The other stuff that changed was, I believe, DEP, environmental stuff from the state that, and I don't know how that works, but we did check that out specifically with the flag lot configuration, or the lot that looks like a flag lot. Jerry, are you available to offer some guidance?
Yeah, no, that's correct. What you just described, Eric, is correct.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so the plan complies with the minimum frontage requirement that was in effect at the time this application was filed. I guess that's the question that I'm posing to Mr. Brown, right?
Yes, it complies with the 37.5-foot frontage and the 75-foot width requirements.
A minimum area, no lot shall have an area of less than 10,000 square feet. Can we comply with that?
Yes, every lot complies with that.
Front and rear yard setbacks. The front yard setback shall be not less than 15 feet and the rear yard shall not be less than 25 feet.
Yes, it complies with that also.
Setbacks from corner lots, to the extent we have any corner lots. I don't know if we do. The lot shall have an observe a setback of at least 15 feet from each street right-of-way line.
Yes.
We comply.
Yes.
Side yard setback, each lot shall have combined side yard setbacks of at least 30 feet. And neither side yard setback shall be less than 10 feet, except that one of the side yards may be reduced to 0 feet.
Yes, we comply with that. And there is a zoning, a chart of zoning requirements on the plans that addresses each of these requirements and shows by lot how they comply.
So just to make sure I heard you correctly, Mr. Letizia, the corner lot, you have, did you say 5.0 setback or 15-foot setback from each street?
Corner lot shall be 1.5.
Okay.
15 feet from each street lot.
Thank you.
And you already covered the open space percentages. That is the allocation between reserved and usable. Do we meet all the minimum requirements that are set forth in the cluster ordinance?
Yes, we do.
I have no further questions for Mr. Brown.
Yeah, I have a question, Tim, if I can. Ask
Sure.
Mr. Green. Could we go back to the Scopian report? What numbered item in his report were you objecting to?
Item 9 on page 5. But I think we agreed that it's a moot point since it's not a requirement of the municipality.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Board questions for Mr. Brown, Mr. Cohen, and then Mr. O'Donnell.
Yeah, this is a fairly minor thing, but in the shade tree report, and there's a concern that the verge between the road and the sidewalk is not sufficient width for planting the street trees. And we didn't hear any response to that. I know that's something that Mr. Dobromilsky, as the landscape consultant, is often concerned about as well. So, Mr. Brown, can you just address what's the width of that verge?
Okay, I'll have to consult the plans here.
Mr. Cohen, is there a updated Shade Tree Commission report? I don't recall seeing one.
I saw a shade tree report in the bundled staff
Yes.
reports.
It's towards
April-
the very back of all of these staff reports. Which
April
should be the
5th.
very last report.
April 5th is the date.
Again, maybe I can obtain that from you, Carrie, tomorrow. I don't have it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Actually, we're showing the street trees as being on the outside of the sidewalk, on the lot side of the sidewalk.
Okay, that's actually what they recommended. So, so good.
Other questions, Mr. Cohen?
No, not at this time.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Thank you. I don't know if Mr. Brown can answer this question, but since it was part of his testimony, I'm going to bring it up and hope somebody else can chime in. In the cluster density bonus calculation chart, the affordable housing tract was a good part of that. That's contingent upon the municipality accepting that tract for affordable housing. Has any movement been made on that?
I can answer that, Mr. O'Donnell. There was a letter from my office to the governing body. I'm going to say maybe 2019 or 2020.
Yeah.
It was not acted upon. I don't think it wasn't acted upon, at least at that time. I don't believe it's acted upon since then. So to answer your question, there hasn't been a formal acceptance of the dedicated affordable housing parcel.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. And I do have one other question.
Owen, if I could jump in on that?
Absolutely.
I think we want to make a condition of the approval.
Surely, yeah.
That the municipality accepts it.
Right. Yeah, no, because that's an important part of the cluster, the density bonus. So yes, it should definitely be a condition on there. If something happens between now and the time we come to vote on this. And the other question that I had is Mr. Skupian outlined a number of details and data that he needed. I assume we're going to need a condition on that if that material is not forthcoming, at some point in the proceedings.
We've been working with Mr. Skupian over the past couple of months to go over the calculations and develop some details of what's going to be required, and we'll continue to do that as the hearing progresses, and hopefully we'll bring it to a resolution.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Mr. Texarney?
Yes, hi. So one thing that was mentioned in a previous meeting, which I don't know if we got clarity on, was the issue of the extension of Herrontown Road and the conventional subdivision. And so I think that the conventional subdivision is expecting that the road be extended, and that is, to me, isn't very clear whether or not that road would actually be extended, because it's a public road and it would require the municipality to agree to construct that road. And so I'm curious whether or not that conventional subdivision is viable. And so if it isn't the way that it is configured, wouldn't the cluster need to be modified based off of how many parcels are actually developable in the conventional subdivision? So it'd be good to get some clarity on that. Does that make sense?
Mr. Letizia?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Honestly, maybe we can pull up the conventional plan and
So just to be clear, Mr. Texarney, are we talking about the original conventional one that was presented in 2019 or the revised as of
Both.
right that was presented tonight?
But both.
Okay.
Because I think both conventional subdivisions have lots facing that road that is not built, it's not constructed. So it technically those buildings, those lots aren't developable if there's no road facing those lots.
but maybe if we can pull up the conventional plan and see I see a portion of it on my screen.
Scroll
Randy,
down,
Can you scroll down?
whoever has the. Who has the?
Did we lose your operator as well, Mr. Letizia?
I hope not. I think he's on.
That's Mr. Curtis, is that?
Yes.
Jerry, did this Dan Dobromilski, would an applicant have a right to use a public right of way or expect to be able to use that?
You mean for its own improvements?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, then the other question, I guess, would be, Jeff, it looks like those lots are such that if you, in theory, built a road parallel to the right of way, you'd have enough dimension. We can't see it yet. And I'm not trying to just, it looks to me like there is sufficient room under the,
Right.
looks like we got somebody now to move it.
Yeah, I don't know offhand if that's the case, but I don't know why the applicant wouldn't be able to build a road in a public right of way. And really, maybe that's
Well,
more of a legal question, but
if
that
the
would be the
municipal-
proposal that the applicant construct road within a public right of way.
Well, I mean, the municipality would have to agree to that.
Right.
So,
But why would they not if it's a public right of way?
I don't know.
Well, yeah, Zenon, this was something that I did think a lot about a couple of years ago. To me, it seems like the municipality wouldn't necessarily agree to allow a developer to build a cul-de-sac, but, would be, but if we got a connection all the way through to Mount Lucas, which is, the right of way does extend all the way through. I'm not sure that it's reasonable to say that, the municipality would not allow. I mean, we're talking about having the developer do off-track improvements to Harrington Road, and this is just another improvement to Harrington Road that's on our maps.
Yeah, I'm curious as to whether the municipality has to allow the developer to do it. And also, I mean, I don't know if the road necessarily, if it would make sense to extend it all the way to Mount Lucas, because actually there's pretty steep slopes there. And I don't know how safe that would be. I mean, I guess, you know, there's steep roads, but I mean, I don't know if that's a ideal thing to do.
It's an interesting question, yeah.
And in which case, I mean, you'd have to build a cul-de-sac, I mean, in order to have the turning capabilities of a fire truck or whatever, or any other vehicle.
Jerry, can I just weigh in a minute? I just wanted to note, some of this will be addressed on the objector's case, just so everyone realizes that. Because our experts on these issues haven't gone. And we did touch on some of what Mr. Cexani is addressing on the right-of-way question in our early cross-examination, but that was about 5 years ago, I think. As
Yeah.
Four
So
years
we
ago.
had- Yeah, 4 years ago. So we have planned to address some of this ourselves. I just thought everyone should know that. That will
Yeah.
be at some point in the future.
I'm assuming that's what Zenon is actually remembering is.
Yeah, I was listed as being absent in one of the meetings, and I rewatched most of the meeting, realizing halfway through that I actually listened. I was sat in on the meeting, so I wasn't actually absent that meeting.
If that area is shown as a future street, public way, I mean, I agree with Mr. Brown. I believe we would have the right to build that. I mean, you know, unless the town eliminates the public rights in that area. So
I don't know. I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I mean,
Yeah, I don't agree with Tom. I don't think the town's required to do anything with respect to that.
well, if we're going to build it, we're building the road. I'm
No, I
not asking
understand.
the town to build it.
No, I understand that, but I don't think the town could be forced to
All right,
to
well,
accept
we'll
improvements.
save that argument for another day, but,
Yeah.
you know, I sort of find it really interesting how, you know, this has been proposed for what now, 5 years, and we can't, you know, it seems that we continue to argue over it.
Well,
Your
my
own
clients
staff-
did
your
raise
own
it very
staff-
early on.
Your own staff has said that this conforms for purposes of determining base density. So in any event, it sounds like we're not going to solve it tonight. We obviously have a position.
Couldn't you could build the road completely on your property and still be conforming?
We could. Correct.
And that was Mr. Dobromilski. I couldn't.
Yes, sorry.
see-
I
Okay,
apologize.
thank you.
Yes.
No, that you're being blocked by the exhibit, so. Other board questions for Mr. Brown? I have a question related to his testimony, and it's for Jerry. It's the one that that Mr. Boddingheimer brought up, and that's in the page 8 of 12 of Dan and Derek's report. In staff comment about pursuant to section 10B 1608. The applicant is required to widen and reconstruct the road along the frontage of the property. Does the board have the authority to not require that? Or I was, when we were waiting for Mr. Brown, I was searching in vain for 10B 1608 to see what it said. But I think it's an interesting question that was raised by Mr. Boddingheimer, and I just want to know the extent and ability to which the board would be able to waive that if it found that it constituted a problem for the environment.
I know that Mr. Texarney has his hand up. I didn't know if you wanted to open up the meeting to the public at the end of the night before we close.
Well, I think we're in the portion where board members are asking questions of the person who testified. So my question to Jerry is related to that testimony. So I can assure you we will have a hard stop at 11 and, but I'd like to know if other board members have questions related to Mr. Brown's testimony. And then, I don't see a problem with opening to the public.
Thank you.
Mr. Texarney has his hand up, and Mr. Weissman, there's an unanswered question for Jerry that I asked.
Yeah, if that's in the site plan section, the section that's cited, the board would have the power to grant the waiver from that.
Okay, thank you.
Just wanted to provide clarification again. I'm sorry. It was a typo. It's 10B-168.
Oh, 168.
Yes.
Yeah, I have it in front of me. You're absolutely right. It was a typo because I was looking for 1608 or 1680, whatever it was in the memo. It is, Jerry, in the design standard.
Okay.
For subdivision.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you for the answer. Mr. Texarney.
Yeah, another question related to this conventional subdivision. I mean, obviously this option would have serious environmental degradation. And so, you know, obviously this isn't the preferred option, but I mean, I kind of also still wonder about the developability of this option in terms of you know, damage and, you know, impact to wetlands. And so I was just curious, you know, this option shows more wetlands encroachment, and I'm just curious what kind of permits would have to be required to build something like this. And so, you know, especially the lots in the back, you know, in the old growth forests where there are wetlands over the brook, you know, is that factored in at all? And I'm just curious to hear what would be involved to actually build something like this.
Well, the permits for the entrance road off of Herringtown would be pretty much identical to what would be required for the cluster, which we are applying for. But as I mentioned in my testimony, we would also require a flood hazard permit for the crossing of Van Horn Brook. So yes, there would be additional permits. There would also be, I'm sure, wetlands permits associated with that crossing. So there would be more permits required than are required for the cluster design.
And do you think that you could get those permits?
Yes.
That's pretty standard. Those are standard permits.
Right. Yeah, there are permits, individual permits for crossing waterways.
Yeah.
And
what
there are
about
standards?
And what about like building on steep slopes? So like, you know, do you have some buildings on pretty severe slopes?
Well, the only part that's restricted is if you see the dark spot in the middle of the property, there are some 25% slopes there.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, none of the including that, none of the construction is proposed on those 25% slopes. And the ordinance permits construction on slopes up to 25%.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Texarney. Mr. Councilman Cohen?
Yeah, this is another question for Jerry. So giving Jerry a workout tonight. I have a question about the notion that sort of some of our requirements, because they're not requirements in RSIS, are therefore irrelevant. And, you know, that one of the areas where Mr. Brown made that argument was in this idea of having two means of entrance and egress from the property. But it seems like a pretty broad argument. I mean,
yeah,
in a lot of ways, you know, we have dozens of requirements. All of our requirements for cluster development are our requirements. They're not RSIS requirements, and yet the applicant is complying with those. So I don't know if there's a bright line, where RSIS trumps local requirements, or where they can coexist. And I know it's a really broad question, but I'd like you to reflect on it a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the answer to that is, and I'd like the Dans to jump in. I guess it was always my impression, maybe not understanding, that a municipality could adopt more stringent standards than those in RSIS. But Dan Weissman, Dan Dobromilsky, any comments?
This Dan Dobromilsky, I think that's not correct. I think the
No.
RSIS supersedes municipal codes, and when it comes to the access, my recollection is it has to do with the average daily trips. So it's based upon the type of use, this being single family use, and there's a formula for the number of traffic trips that'll occur, and then that tells you what the road design can be. And by having the boulevarded entrance, that is how they get the qualification for the two entrances. The boulevarded entrance in theory is two entrances, and kind of that's the alternate, if I remember correctly.
Thanks, Dan.
And I would just opine that I echo that. I believe RSIS dictates that it's the maximum that the RSIS requirements are the maximum that a municipality can enforce, as I understand it. The roadway classification, Breer Lane, which on the subdivision, the cluster subdivision, up to the point where it crosses, I believe it's Harper Lane or Harper Court, that is classified as a residential access street, which has up to, I think, 1,500 average daily vehicle traffic. From there, each of the roadways become a cul-de-sac, which is classified under a 250 average daily vehicle trips. So that's why I think that dual boulevard system is appropriate for access for this road as it relates to RSIS.
Just a general question about RSIS, Dan. Based upon just a comment you made, does that mean a municipality can have less stringent standards than RSIS, and that would apply, and they would apply?
Less stringent standards.
That's true.
Sorry?
Yeah, I think so. If you said you only have required to have 15-foot wide roads, the RSIS would still apply. And it would not
Still
be.
what, Dan?
I think can you hear me? I think that would be the case. I think RSIS overrules all local standards when it was adopted. The idea was the builders wanted uniform standards across the whole state.
Yeah.
Now, the question of neighborhood residential standards, David, I know it's kind of off topic a little bit here, we're getting a little sidetracked, but RSIS only applies for applications appearing before a board. So 1 or 2 family development that just goes through a zoning permit may be exempt from RSIS.
Thank you.
With everything that's been said by the Dans. It's consistent with my understanding of the RSIS and its implications upon municipalities and reviewing site plan application.
Thank you. Any other questions from members of the board? Agreeing that we will have a hard stop at 11, and I would invite members of the public who would like to question Mr. Brown to raise their hand and be brought over to ask questions of Mr. Brown. I notice we have 9 attendees. No hands are raised. And we have 1 hand. the Watershed Institute.
I've moved them over.
Thank you, Carrie. Mr. Lesko, do you have the your timer? Ah, there we go. Thank you. Could you?
I'm going to swear you in. If you could raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do. I was going to ask questions.
So sworn or affirm, but go ahead.
So do I was going to ask questions of Mr. Brown.
Could you state your name for the record?
Sure. My name is Mike Pissar. I'm the policy director for the Watershed Institute. I'm also an attorney. I did have quite a few questions for Mr. Brown, which I would like to reserve to a future meeting, given the late time. And I also
appreciate that.
I also wanted to bring up, and I had raised my hand earlier. Mr. Brown referenced a series of exhibits that were dated just a couple days ago that were not available to the public. So, I object to testimony in exhibits that are being used when the public had no ability to review prior to this hearing.
Mr. Chairman, that's not correct. All the exhibits that we showed this evening were given to the municipality for posting on the website.
So
I didn't.
Mr. Letizia, I mean, maybe I took my notes wrong. Exhibit 20 through 25 had a date of April 17th of this year.
Correct. That's correct.
They were placed on the website on Tuesday by 12 o'clock noon, which is a requirement for exhibits that the applicant wishes to put on the website. So that is the deadline.
Okay, so they're there now?
They are there. And they're under the exhibits, and it will be 01 through I can't remember the number sequence, but there may be 15 slides or so. And they're not marked with the revised exhibit number because we put them up on Tuesday.
I may be experiencing a technical error, but the Lanwin exhibits go through exhibit A9 lot 2, and then objectors exhibits 01 through 05.
And then it should follow those. Just keep scrolling down.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not seeing those as I'm looking right this second.
There's the exhibits from the first hearing, and then the exhibit, it's under the new application.
All right, I will.
Yeah, there's a lot of material, sir, I know.
Yep, no, I appreciate that. And the other thing, Mr. Scupian had referenced a handful of emails and document exchanges. Again, unless I'm experiencing technical difficulties, because I'm not seeing those, if those could be made available to the public as well, because I have some significant concerns about approving stormwater management with some of these tests being conditional. So if that information could be available for review beforehand, I would appreciate it.
Everything should be in order, sir. If you want, I can work with you tomorrow and go over everything.
I appreciate it, Carrie. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Other questions, Mr. Pissarro, or we've gone to 3 minutes, but we were discussing website issues. So
yeah. So as I said, I do have quite a few questions for Mr. Brown, but given the lateness, I would like to reserve until another date.
Okay. Well, we've agreed upon the July. Please jump in, Carrie. July 7th, I believe.
July 6th.
July 6th.
July 6th.
I was close. So we'll see you then.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Quinn, just since you're going to now be chairing, I guess, the remaining hearings for this application. It was my understanding that the process is applicant presents his witnesses, board asks questions, and then the public, after all the witnesses, asks questions of the witnesses. Isn't that the process? That's what we've always been following here.
Well, yes, I believe so. So I will discuss with the chair the procedures, and if I was out of line, please accept my apology.
No, it's fine. Given the short period of time that was remaining, and I know there've been a number of people that have been, waiting. It's fair, right? That there'd be some public get a chance to talk or ask questions, but I just was hoping that we could
stick to the plan.
Stick with the plan.
Well, I think the board, I think the chair has the discretion to do it on a witness by witness basis. And the one advantage here of doing it on a witness by witness basis is this is so extended that, if you waited until after all the witnesses, the board members might not even remember what the.
Well, I don't know.
Not only the board members, members of the public,
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. Okay.
If
But
I
the
could
point-
just note one thing, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Yeah, just to make it easier, Tom and I, Jerry, Ms. Quinn, agreed, and I think it's the same thing we did last time, that we'll hold our cross-examination till Tom is done with his witnesses completely. I think that's what Tom and I talked about. That may make it easier for everybody, so.
Okay.
And that's fine. I appreciate that.
Okay.
All right.
So seeing no one else with their hand in the air, I think that we'll close public comment. Thank you, Mr. Pissarro.
Thank you.
And Jerry, can you advise on next steps? I think we've agreed on a date. You're on mute.
Just to notify the public that there will not be further notice of the hearing date of July 6th.
Okay. So that being said, Mr. Cohen, do your duty.
I move that we adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Everyone seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Thank you all.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Good
Tim.
night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.